Patterson.
My name is Mrs. Grant.
I'm the president of the UIC, which is Jamaica's official third political party in Jamaica. So you know that Jamaica have two main parties, right?
Yeah.
So this one is the newest one on the block.
Yeah.
We're committed to fixing the problem that they have not fixed in the last 70 years.
Me again did it great. And how far me I coming from. And me no reach it. Me no upset. Cause how far me I come from and me no reach it. Me happy when me dem, me nah worry, me nah fret. I saw the thing go, I saw life set. Me nah get upset, no. How far me I come from and me no reach it. Me happy when me dem, me nah worry, me nah fret. I saw the thing go, I saw life set. Me nah get upset, no. Me never understand when me little and I go. If me throw out a door, that means so me poor. And when hunger speak and none of the house to eat, me just go find a fruit tree. Water got me like an Nancy story in me grandmother arm. Laughed and love her true riches now me panties calm alone on one. Early morning, wake up, pick up and back up yourself. After that, go draw the water from the well, wash up my body, press me clothes, we got school, go spell. Me mad, I no money alone, need to young fan knowledge as well. And my father, woulda kick me down if no waste the money and get expelled. How far me I come from and me no reach it. Me happy when me dem, me nah worry, me nah fret. I saw the thing go, I saw life set, me nah get upset, no.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. I am Joseph Patterson, and tonight we're going to be talking about our national heroes. In particular, we're going to look at who should really be our heroes. Are the 7 that's listed the ones who we should have as our national heroes? Should we take off any of them? Should there be other people who are added to the list as national heroes? So tonight we're going to have a very spirited conversation. I'm looking forward to all of your inputs. So feel free to write your comments in the comment sections. And I'm going to speak to as many of them as possible. Greetings, Craig McKenzie. Good to see you on all the way from Canada. And all of you who are on with us tonight from anywhere around the world. I see On the Ground is on as well. Thank you very much for joining us. So you know our national heroes. We have officially 7 of them. And we should really look at these heroes and ask some serious questions about their background, their relevance, their significance to us as a people. What role did they really play in the evolution from where we were to where we are now? Oftentimes, we tend not to know much or remember much or understand much about our history. So tonight we're going to try to dissect our history a little bit, remind ourselves of some things, and even learn some new things and challenge ourselves and others. I want you to look at our heroes in a fresh new perspective. Who was Nanny of the Maroons really? Who was Paul Bogle? Who was Sam Sharp? What did these men and women really do? How significant is Marcus Garvey, and why should we revere him? What did he do for Jamaica and Jamaicans? And then we have 2 very unique characters in the list, Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante, the last 2 of our listed 7 national heroes. So we're going to talk about them. I want to know which one is your favorite, which one you like the most, and why. We're going to talk about that tonight as well. Bless up yourself, Sulphur. Good to see you on. And I see Craig McKenzie is already saying Sam Sharp is my guy, along with Marcus Garvey. Why? I'm going to put a link in the comment section here. If you want to jump on the live and talk to me directly, you can use this link to come in if you want to kind of talk on screen. I know most of you are shy, but if anyone of you want to be brave enough to come on and have a chat, we can do that. Magalian says, Dashwe Bostamanti. So clearly, Magalian, you have a very negative attitude towards Bustamante, and I'd love to hear why, and we can talk about that. I see my good friend VP Chase Neal is in the house tonight wearing his dashiki and thing, looking quite African and proud, and I'm very happy to see that. Let me go change. You want to give me 1 second? Just kidding. Yeah, man. Welcome. Good night, Mr. Neal. How are you doing?
Good night, Mr. Patterson. I'm good. Great to be here. Good night, everyone.
Wonderful. You're looking very good. I love the outfit. Really appreciate it. You look like a real African chief. I can call you Chief Neal from now on instead of Chase Neal. Chief Neal. All right, Chief, before we get into the meat of it, do you have anything you want to say just as an introduction to anything, just general? Take the floor.
All right. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I wish for you, what's remaining of Heroes Day, a happy one. And that as we commemorate the true heroes, that we also seek to be heroes within our own rights. And I'd also like to use this platform to thank those 30 heroes who voted against the system on election day during the by-elections in Northeast Central. And I look forward to more persons looking to create the best Jamaica instead of the ones that the colonizers have created for us. So
well
that's
said.
it.
Well said, Chief Neal. I'm going to call you Chief from now. Fix your collar, though. Is it kind of bent in? Fix your... Yeah, that one. Yeah. I want the Chief to look good enough. Yeah, man. Perfect. Now you're complete. Excellent. All right. So I see Tony Bernard saying Paul Bogle is for him. And Underground says Marcus Garvey is a true hero. And Peter White says, blessed evening to all. I know it's going to be a great program. UIC all the way. Vote UIC. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter White. And let me wish all of you as well a belated Happy Heroes Day. I deliberately didn't put out any message this year because I just want to talk to you live and direct and straight tonight. I'm going to talk about the significance of Heroes Day, the significance of heroes, and in particular, those we identify as our national heroes. I want to kick off tonight by talking about the person I consider as the first national hero. She's a very significant person. Of course, I'm supposed to call her a heroine. Sound like heroin, like drugs, but national heroine. Her name, for the record that we have on record, is Nanny of the Maroon. Now, Nanny is a very peculiar character, especially the way she has been shown to us. I remember when, as a boy in school, Nanny was represented as almost like a Obia woman, who can catch bullets in her, and them kind of thing. That, so I found it a bit laughable then as a child, and then as I grew up, I gave it a little bit more thought and a little bit more research to bring myself up to standard. But let me play for a little thing from the GIS. We're going to look at a few clips from the GIS for each of the national heroes, and then we're going to talk about what the GIS is saying, what we know, and get your reaction on that, everyone. But before I play that, let me big up Agro Valley Farm. Two of them among the seven, I don't see them as national heroes, Manley and his cousin. How can people who play a major role in creating the culture of violence and division be regarded as heroes? Boy, oh boy. It looked like we have some serious thoughts about these people. And Magalian says, when you mess with Rasta, you mess with brand Jamaica and realness. And Janet says, Shalom, my fellow uniters. All right, so let's watch this short clip, and then we're going to talk about it and see if you know, our thoughts align you know, with whoops, do I want to do that? Let me see here. Yes, here we go.
National heroes and heroine of Jamaica. Jamaica have 6 national heroes and 1 national heroine. National heroes. 1. Right Excellent Samuel Sharp. 2. Right Excellent Paul Bogle. 3. Right Excellent George William Gordon. 4. Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey. 5. Right Excellent Sir Alexander Bustamante. 6. Right Excellent Norman Manley. Heroine. Right Excellent Nanny of the Maroon. Right.
Okay, so we showed you the wrong video first, but that's okay. We're going to now look at the one on Nanny in particular. So let's try that again and see if we can learn something from the GIS about our good friend Nanny.
Mante, my name is Marcia Douglas, currently the acting colonel of the Charleston Maroon Community, the Chief. Welcome to our museum. So the role of Nanny of the Maroon in Freedom for the Maroon is that she provide or she make herself into the diligent leader that one would have been looking for. One with spirituality, one with the zeal of moving on, and one with the zeal to protect. And so what she did was to ensure that her people had been served the right way, in which she ensures that they were no longer in slavery. So what she did was to undermine the British on the plantation with the help of her 2 sisters, Mishibo Kwashi and Shanti Rose. And so doing that, they took their people to the mountains where they had an advantage over the British. The British had to import dogs or bloodhounds from Cuba to hunt them down. Now, later on, when the treaty was signed and Jamaica gained independence, it was really a hard tackle for people to recognize Nanny for who she was. Thanks to recent Colonel Harris of Moortown, who had made that one of his deepest dream and one of his aim, one of the most sustainable things that he was going to work on, so that Nanny could have been today the national heroine of Jamaica.
All right, so let's have a chat about Nanny. What are your thoughts on Nanny, Mr. Neil?
Well, I don't think we have really touched the surface of who Nanny is. The information that we have about her is very sketchy. What Colonel Douglas presented does seem to dignify her more than what the history books have taught us. And I should express my condolences now to the Moortown Maroons. Colonel Douglas passed away last Wednesday on her way to a celebration. So rest in peace, Colonel. All right. Shortly after doing that interview too. No, Nanny is presented as somewhat of a zany character to students who are really introduced to Nanny. You know, this lady bending over backward to take bullets in her posterior. We don't learn so much of Nani's military prowess, as the colonel was trying to show us. We don't see really why was she um, included among the heroes. So really, unless we do the research ourselves outside of what is presented in the textbooks, um, Nani's contribution when compared to the other heroes, the other true heroes might be minuscule or minimal.
Mhm.
Yes, I think more needs to be done to explore who was Nani.
There's
Um,
no doubt.
yes,
There,
and
there,
information is there, but Jamaicans need to know.
yeah, I
That's
mean it's really unfair to the Jamaican people to present such a sketchy history of such an important figure and to present her in fact I was disappointed with even what was presented. This is from the Jamaica Information Service, and that's all they could put together to say this is one of our national heroes, the only female among the seven, and this is all they could present about her. Not a careful documentary, even if it's 1 minute or 2 minutes, but that gives you a real understanding. Let me put it in context for you who Nani was. Nani was a woman in a man's world. Okay? Nani was a woman at a time when human beings were clearly kept as slaves and were at the mercy of their masters. Uh, she faced certain death if she rebelled against her colonial masters. She would not have had it would not have been normal for her to be in a significant leadership role, leading men and boys and women into battle of any sort. So Nani was really Jamaica's first military general and genius. If you want to talk about Nani, you have to see Nani as the powerful woman that she was, as a military strategist, a organizer of men and women, somebody who could do proper mapping, geography to ensure she understand the terrain and how best to use it to her advantage. The narrator said that Nani had the advantage of the mountains. That's being quite simplistic because the British had the advantage of military training, professional soldiers, and the artillery and machinery and the money to wage a campaign against anyone who dared to stand up against them. And Nani, a woman in a man's world at the time of the heights of slavery, stood up and led men into battle strategically, effectively. As a matter of fact, Jamaica would benefit greatly if we had such a leader today that could strategically navigate the treacherous waters of geopolitics and lead to an excellent outcome to be able to cause your attackers, your enemies, to seek a truce, a peace treaty of sort, to allow them to carry on their activities without you being one of the enemies they have to fight. So Nani has been downplayed. She's there as a token, but not as a true representation of what she means. Now, there are those who have thoughts about the Maroons in terms of the role they played in the whole internal slavery politics at the time, in terms of Maroons being given their limited autonomy, provided that they do not welcome any other runaway slaves and even return runaway slaves and so on. And all of us looking today from our vantage point can be very, very critical of the Maroons and Nani and so on, not understanding all the context that was at play at the time. Your thoughts on that, Mr. Neil?
all right. I had wanted to comment on that. And now people say there are two sides to a story. Some say there are three sides. What we often forget is that the British played the enslaved Africans and the Maroons against each other. Now, what they often did was to promise slaves reward of freedom if they could help find the Maroon villages. And at that time, there were many slaves who, because of the promise of freedom, led the plantation owners up to the hills to the Maroon settlements and villages where they would not then destroy them. So the Maroons were, well, they made a political choice to protect their own persons in the mountains, but also by agreeing to that truce with the British to capture the runaway slaves, they were ensuring that they would no longer be sought out by the same people they were trying to free.
Mhm.
If we remember our history, what caused all of this was that the Maroons practiced raiding the plantations and liberating slaves and bringing them to join their communities.
Mhm.
The planters and the redcoat soldiers got tired of this, and so they did a bribery thing. No,
Mm.
bribe the slaves to lead them to the Maroon settlements and proceeded to destroy hundreds of lives in Maroon settlements, and at the same time bribe the Maroons, help us to catch them, and we will not raid your settlements any longer. We often don't look at those two sides. We blame the Maroons, and then we have to ask ourselves, what would we have done if we risk our lives to go and rescue these people, and these people keep on leading these people into our villages to destroy us? What would
Mhm.
we have done?
I
Uh,
like your question. I like your question, Mr. Neil, because what you're, let's take it to today. Right now, today, we see ourselves selling out ourselves. A long time we are sell out ourselves. From the shores of Africa, where some tribes took benefits, took guns and ammunitions and trinkets from Europe to go and catch other Africans from other tribes and sell them into slavery. Right now, today, you have Jamaicans who are selling out Jamaica because of their connection with one or the other of the two parties. And you have leaders of Jamaica selling out Jamaica to foreigners, colonizers, in order to feather their own nest. So we understand the human dynamics. One thing, though, we can settle on with Nanny of the Maroon. She was damn brave. She was a military genius. She was a powerhouse. She's a woman that we should lift up in front of our girls and our boys and show them that you can have, in the darkest moments of our history, a woman can stand up and fight and successfully do so and win concessions and cause men of all stripe to have to adjust their behaviors accordingly. So hats off to Nanny of the Maroons. Now we're going to turn our attention to another one of our national heroes. But before we do so, let's check out the comments. I see Sulfur making some comments here. He says, Nanny was able to map the land and navigate, cook out fire, and a lot more that I would consider to be advanced even in this age. You're right, in a Sulfur. I mean, you're talking about navigation, communication, military tactics, dealing with living in the wild, right? Because remember, unlike the British soldiers, there was nobody she could send for reinforcement, send for imported materials to, bolster her army. She had to live off the land. They had to use the terrain available to them to make something out of nothing. She had to turn her hand and make fashion. And so, if nothing else tonight, I want us to leave with a new respect for Nanny, a new regard for Nanny, an appreciation for her as the first military general of Jamaica and the most successful. We have had no other military generals in Jamaica that have shown the level of success that Nanny has shown. None. Name one military general. We have not fought a single major battle to secure our freedom. We had our freedom handed to us by a negotiated settlement with the British by two persons that we call national heroes today. And that's where very questionable. And we're going to talk about that. But I want us tonight to see Nanny for who she really was, a powerful military general, the first female military general of Jamaica and the most successful. Sulfur says, I think the nanny story narrative have been twisted to diminish her true position. I agree. And used in the benefit of colonial leaders to keep women from psychologically reaching their true potential. Big up yourself, Sulfur. Totally agree. As a matter of fact, all of the national heroes, save two, their stories have been corrupted to give us a diminished view or a limited view of the seriousness and significance of their work, while two of them has been exalted to near angelic-like status to mislead us into thinking that they are in fact national heroes when they're national traitors. We're going to come to that. True Maroons, said on the ground, are found in Guyana. They never signed no peace treaty. They fight all the way without peace treaty. Well, I hear what you're saying on the ground, but I'm not going to say true Maroons versus, Mr. Neil, how do you define Maroon? What is the definition for Maroon?
Well, the Maroons even have a definition for themselves that the system doesn't allow. But we can look at Maroon from a cultural perspective as what you identify with, the community that you identify with. It is a political identity too, but it is also genetic in some aspects, in that there have been some articles stating that the Tainos went and had children with the escaped slaves in the mountains, and their descendants are the Maroon. So I would say, if you live in Maroon territory and you accept Maroon lifestyle, and if you are descended from that bloodline, then you are a Maroon. It is, I don't know how we define true or false Maroon with those.
Okay. Well, I want to make it very simple, because I find all of that, to be honest with you, a bit complicated. I want to move away from the division that they want to sow with all kind of definition of Maroons. Maroons are Africans. They're Africans who fought for their rights and occupy a particular place in history when they were doing so. The books try to tell us that in Jamaica, the Maroons were runaway slaves. There are those who have a different story to tell. Some associate them with the Africans that were here before the Spanish and before the British arrived. And some talk about the slaves that were transported here from Africa and who were then, who escaped the plantation and joined forces. In my book, all of them are just Africans. All of we are just Africans. And we have dealt ourselves a raw deal by becoming divided, first in Africa, into tribes, too many languages, we can't talk to each other and communicate effectively, and too licky-licky. Our leaders, we have some licky-licky leaders that we allowed to sell us out. Damn fools, because what they did was to sell all of the young men and beautiful young women of Africa into the hands of the colonizers, raping Africa of its next generation, of its most brilliant minds, just like what we do in Jamaica here. The two colonial parties maintain a system of economic refugees where the best and brightest run away from Jamaica to go find better in other lands, robbing ourselves of their talents and their skills and competencies, and creating the wrong gene pool in Jamaica, building a mass accumulation of those with lesser competencies and allowing a few to manipulate, trick, deceive, distract, and push them into perpetual poverty, living off the scraps that falls from the oligarch's table. And so the first thing we need to understand as Africans is what went wrong. We messed up severely by trusting leaders to make decisions on our behalf that are inconsistent with our good interest. So those of us who joined with our chieftains in the coastal areas of Africa and agreed to go and capture our brothers and sisters and sell them to the paleface for guns and ammunition and trinkets from Europe, We were misled, misguided, and by the time we figure it out, all of we were taken over and colonized. So if we learn from that, we can change our behavior now. Now, shall we change? Shall we say, look, we now understand how this colonial system works, how they divide us and conquer us. Shall we now remain divided into orange and green, or shall we do what the UIC says and clasp hands, join hands together, don't break ranks, form a solid barrier against corruption and colonialism, and build a system of good governance to liberate ourselves, to emancipate ourselves. So that's where we're heading. But let's skip over now to the second national hero that I want us to look at and see what we can learn from this goodly gentleman and his experience. Let me see if I can get that for you now.
Think on this. How would you feel if Sunday is your regular rest day off from work, but just because Christmas Day falls on that day, your boss unilaterally decides you do not deserve an extra day of rest? Added to that, the previous Christmas you were entitled to 3 days off during the season, but months before this particular holiday, a law was passed giving only 2 days. This is the kind of injustice and ill treatment that was meted out to Samuel Sharp. Up to 1830, the enslaved were allowed 3 days holiday at Christmas. In February 1831, the House of Assembly passed a law reducing Christmas holidays from 3 to 2, Christmas and Boxing Day only. Since Christmas Day 1831 fell on Sunday, a rest day, Sharp believed that they were entitled to the following Tuesday. A strike ensued. The resistance to work ballooned into what history records as the Christmas Rebellion, the ill-fated event that helped pave the way to freedom. Born about 1780, Sam Sharp was the slave of an English lawyer in Montego Bay, St. James. Sharp was a lay deacon of the Birchell Baptist Church and became a leader in the congregation. Samuel, Sam, Daddy Sharp, saw the injustices of slavery and inspired his fellow brothers and sisters to participate in Jamaica's first strike action. There were no labor laws at that time that spoke to the rights or privileges of slaves. Sharp may be considered a forerunner to the labor movement as he fought for the rights of his fellow workers. For this, Samuel Sharp was hanged on May 23, 1832. But as he said,
"I would rather die upon yonder gallows than live in slavery."
In 1834, the Abolition Bill was passed by the British Parliament, and in 1838, slavery was abolished.
All right, let's talk about Daddy Sharp. What are your thoughts on Mr. Sharp, Chief Neil?
Well, Samuel Sharp stood for the rights of the people, stood for justice. Leading to that rebellion, I think he's of the mind that true uniters who are really in line with the core values, that government should be curtailed and not have random power to take away people's liberties. And so he stood for well, at the time, although they weren't considered sovereign being slaves, but still, he stood for the personal sovereignty of each and every one and their personal autonomy. And for that, he suffered. And I think that we should have that same backbone where we see that we are taken advantage of by our government and by others, instead of bending over backwards because of some thought of them being above us. We should actually stand for what we believe in and stand for what is right.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy that those who penned the limited history they give us of Sam Sharp included his famous statement. I guess, Sam Sharp had the presence of mind. Can you imagine you're about to be hanged? By the way, Sam Sharp was not. Sam Sharp was a slave that would have been in the upper class of the slave realm. He wasn't at the bottom, so it's not like he didn't have anything to lose. In any society, in any unjust society, you have stratas. You have people at different levels. So for example, there are some people in the Jamaican society who, if them go out there and lead a demonstration tomorrow, and let's say they do some things, whatever, they do some things that the government think isn't right. If they were to be thrown in jail, it's almost no worse than where they're living. There's no work that they're going to go to the next morning. So it's not like they're going to lose their job because they were thrown in jail. They have no major reputation to protect. They have no major assets or business on the line. So if they lose their freedom and lose, you know, all that comes with you being incarcerated and so on, it's not as big a deal as like a person like Daddy Sharp now, who had kind of risen up the ranks at a time of slavery, who had kind of carved out a niche for himself. Him could have just keep quiet, you know. Him could have just keep quiet and just make it pass. And his fellow Africans who are suffering, he could just pray for them. So me pray for you. Him could have just hoped for them and said, boy, I'm a hope things change for you. Him could have just go maybe one side to the massa and say, boy, I can ease up on them a little, just give them a little bit of break now. But he decided to take the bold step and step forward and put all of his credits at risk, his gains, his privileged position that he has managed to acquire. And he put all of that at risk to fight for the interest of his people. Now, that to me is a hero. It's easy to give up what you don't have. It's hard to give up and to place at risk and to sacrifice when you do have. So most people, when they don't have anything, they'll make any kind of comments and say, oh, those, and I don't know the funny thing about it, many of them still won't do anything. They will say all that should be done, but they still won't do anything. But Daddy Sharp said, I would rather die on yonder gallows than live in slavery. Those were his final words, not just to those standing around the gallows, but those words should echo through the ages down to us. Now let's look at when Daddy Sharp did that. Daddy Sharp began his quest at a time when slavery was still in place. At a time when, remember, by the 1776, the Americans had declared their independence from Britain with the famous words that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And they listed their inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We in the UIC would say differently, life, liberty, and property, because we want to be very clear about what a prosperity is. The prosperity is property ownership. You must own property. If you're going to be free, there's no free man who doesn't own property. And that's why they have property tax in place. They put property tax in place to make sure that only the rich, to whom that small price of property tax means nothing, but to those of us who are struggling, those of us who are trying to come out from the yoke of the bondage under which they placed our ancestors, and we want to now slave again and buy a piece of land, build a piece of house, they want to make sure we're always on the edge of losing that because of our financial fragility. I wonder if you hear what I'm saying. You follow me, Mr. Neil? You understand what I talk about?
Yes. So although we may think that we are free and that we have property, really the aim of property tax is to really give us with one hand while taking with the other, we are never truly free because the property is never truly ours. So, so that is the aim.
And so they have, so right now, my fellow Jamaicans, want to feel so free. We're not free. We are still at the place that caused Sam Sharp said, I would rather die on yonder gallows than live in slavery. And here we are today getting very comfortable in slavery. The best kind of slavery is the one where the slave actually believes he's free because him stop fight. Can you imagine if you were a slave owner and you have a big plantation, many acres, hundreds of acres, and you could convince 100 Africans that they're free on your plantation. All they have to do each day is to get up and go to work for you, and you will give them a little bit, so that they have enough energy to come back to work the next day. And you tell them it's okay, I'm going to allow you to have a plot of land, and you mark out the square, and you allow them to build a little house on it, a small mattress box. And you tell them to give you some of their money, not tell them you, as a condition of their employ, you will automatically withdraw some money out of their pay for the benefit of living in a small square on your property. And after they get their pay, they must find up money out of that to pay you a tax for living on the property. And you get them to believe that they own that piece of square. But remember, you force them to give you some money out of your pay. Let's say I call it NHT for fun. Yeah? And you force them to give you that money out of your pay. And then they can come back and borrow that money from you to build a small box on your house. And they must pay you an interest on that money. And you have a private bank on the side and tell them, well, the price is a bit too high, so you can't get enough from the money we take from your pay. So you must go borrow some more from this private bank I have and pay the interest to them too. And when you have this little piece of mattress box here, you must also pay me a property tax out of that mattress box as well. What an arrangement. And then you're happy and you go with the leader of the plantation and cut the ribbon and clap and cheer and praise him for being God, for allowing you to live in this square that you don't own but you think you own. And you're free, by the way, you're free to do anything you want to do as long as you don't break any of his rules. And his rules keep you from being able to ever compete with him to own your own plantation. I wonder if you follow me. Now, Mr. Neil, does that sound remotely similar to how we're living today?
That sounds like a scam. It is a scam.
Oh, gosh. And my people are happy with that. My people are enjoying that. They're praising whoever gave them NHD. And they're praising whoever gave them the mattress box. And they're happy with that. Let me give you a little bit of statistics here for those who like statistics. Jamaica is 15 times Singapore, 15 times. You can fit 16 Singapore in Jamaica. Singapore has nearly 6 million people, over 92% of whom are homeowners, enjoying a beautiful country, which is safe, orderly, well-maintained, beautifully maintained. The whole country look like a tourist resort. It smell good, it feel good, it look good. But they're only living in a plot of land the size of St. Thomas. Nearly 6 million of them. Now, we here in Jamaica, we are 3 million, roughly. And we're only 3 million because 4 million away were pushed out as economic refugees because of our land, our masters here. Those who kind of look like we in some cases, we have allowed them to cause we to run away from our own land. And if we do stay here, we allow them to charge us a property tax to live on our land. And we allow them to force us, the slave, to buy back the land which was stolen from our ancestors, denied to them. And we are here working our backside off to buy back the land that was stolen from our ancestors. Then we must pay them a rent every year to live on that land. And we're okay with that. So our friends in Singapore, 6 million people, the size of St. Thomas, we, 3 million people, 15 times Singapore, and we still have squatters in this country. What do you say to that, Mr. Neil?
It is really nonsensical. But the thing is now, the people don't know the truth because those who want to keep us in bondage will not show us that what we are doing is living a lie. We are locked out of our own country. We can't live in our own country. And those who can't afford to run away are treated like common criminals for living in our own country. We see where people's homes get bulldozed willy-nilly and they're told that they're criminals for living in their own country. And our government, and when I say government, I don't necessarily mean the current party in the executive, but our government comprised of both colonizer, slave parties, really have made no step at all to allow us to live in our own country as decent human beings. And that is where it is at now. So, I believe.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's quite a scam. I mean, quite a scam. And can you imagine that the UIC has been talking about this scam for a while, and you don't see us having 300,000 views, 1 million views, people coming and saying, "My God, man, enough of this." You know, if every Jamaican were to listen to the UIC, you know, you would have a revolution immediately. Immediately. If they ever listen to us and understand what I'm talking about, instantaneously, you would have a massive eruption, and nothing couldn't contain it. No police, no soldier, no edict from the Prime Minister or the King's Governor General could clamp that back down. As a matter of fact, if the Jamaican people understand what I'm talking about, I guarantee you all 63 MPs would be seen fleeing the parliament and looking for a plane ride out of Jamaica instantly, because the people would have done the reverse of what they did to Sam Sharp. Sam Sharp was hanged because he was advocating what the UIC is talking about. And then these fake misleaders now take him face and put it up and give us a little sketchy view of him and get us to just settle down into our slavery position and accept it. And it's become normalized, and we're chilling in it. We are okay with it. And we now get excited in their lives and jump on their bandwagons and wave with green flag and wave with orange flag, when what we're doing is cheering our own demise. We're clapping to our own demise. It's like, remember, when Sam Sharp did this and died, it was 1832. I like history, because I like to put things in context for it. Remember, I tell you, it's after the American Revolution. So Sam Sharp, as a man who's in a different status, would have gotten material and can read. Could I read? And get some information now about the Declaration of Independence, and that we are real people, we're people too. Not because we're not white, we have rights too. And so Sam Sharp died, was hanged in 1832. This was 2 years before the abolition of slavery. So Sam Sharp's action was a part of a confluence of things that made those in authority realize that them have to change the system now. Now, what they're going to do, though, they're going to change the system, but only to make the slave less aware of his enslaved position. He must feel like he's progressing. Like today, I have Jamaicans telling me that, see how much development is happening on the current administration. Jamaica is developing. See all the I said, what is the development? What is it? See how much building will go up? I said, yes. And what is that for you? How are you benefiting from all the buildings going up? What is it? What does it mean? The development you're talking about is what pleases the eyes while keeps the pocket empty. Is a development that will mean subsequently you're going to be a Jamaican living in Jamaica as a tenant in your own country. So you won't be able to buy any of those properties. You won't be able to live in any of those nice communities. You're going to live, if any at all, in somewhere less than that. And you will not be able to buy what you want to buy because you won't have the income level to afford the inflated prices in the stores and markets. So your grocery bill will be small, not because you're being frugal, but because you're earning less than is required to have a decent basket of grocery. And when you become sick, you will not be going to the Tony Twaits wing. You'll be going to a place where you sit in the corridor and wait until I'm have time for you. And you might not have bandage or, antibiotics or whatever they need. And your child would go to a school where 82% of them fail to matriculate and pass 5 subjects or more, including maths and English. Okay? And your children will be among those calling auntie or uncle overseas and begging for some money through Monogram and can't find a job. So that's what we're talking about here. So Daddy Sharp recognized the problem and he led a rebellion that made the powers that be uncomfortable in 1832. 2 years later, the Queen of England says, okay, this thing has to end now. We have to abolish this arrangement and bring in a new arrangement. And so what they said, we're going to free you, but for 4 years, you're going to be an apprentice. Damn lie. You weren't an apprentice. We're going to free you by making you become excited about the idea of being free, but that you have to go through a period first of being prepared to be free. And that period was simply a period of extending slavery, but not saying I'm extending slavery. I'm going to make you feel like there's a change happening. And so Daddy Sharp kicked off the storm in 1832. By 1834, the announcement was made. And by 1838, full freedom was granted. And last night when we were speaking, I explained to you that that was a fake freedom. Because how can you be free and don't get back the land that was stolen from you? Don't get back even some of the money that was extracted from your slave labor, and the fact that you are now disadvantaged by the learning loss of some 360 years of being enslaved. So now you have genetically fully dunceness being built into the population coming afterwards. I hope you follow what I'm saying here. Mr. Neil, comment and we can go to the next euro.
The thing is, I'm glad that you touched on the point about education or miseducation. Really, it's that we are not taught to think critically. We are not taught to see really what is going on. Through the media, through the education system, we are still being enslaved. So that we are glad for our enslavement. We see the very oppressed protecting their oppressors. And yes, it is a system that it is really deep. And as you said, if Jamaicans realize that we are being controlled and robbed, if we realize that the very things that we celebrate, the so-called achievements of a government that could have been doing 200 times better for the people, but they choose to keep the people under bondage for their own benefits. If we actually realize that, then them have to lift up and left. They would have to leave guard up. And then we know would erect a system of governance that works for us and takes us out of slavery. You had to leave Jamaica to go to Canada in order.
Exactly. I mean, I am so happy. I mean, when I left Jamaica to go to Canada, just to give you some context, I was doing very well in my mind. I had pretty much lifted myself out of poverty at the lowest level, made it to UTech, studied engineering, I was now in a job as assistant manager for instrumentation at the sugar company. And, I felt okay. And I was also running my own business on the side. I felt pretty much in charge and in command of my life. I didn't know all the things I know now, but I was pretty much aware of a lot of things, and I felt I could make it. It's my wife who had left at high school and went to Canada, and we agreed that when we both finished college, we're going to get married. What a smart guy I was, eh? I'll tell you why that is so smart. If you get married early, and all the boys out there, listen to me now, all the young men out there, listen to me. I got married at 23 years old. It's the best decision I ever made. Can you imagine wasting a whole heap of time with a whole heap of woman? And you're wasting money, you're wasting energy, you're not focused. Marrying my wife at 23 gave us immediate focus. We're a family. We have to look at our objectives and so on. In any event, she went to Canada before me. And so when we got married, we had to decide where to live. And she said, well, to be honest with you, since I wanted us to live in Jamaica, she said, well, here's the challenge. I am not particularly comfortable with having a child in what I see as the hospital at the moment. And I said, you know what? There's a big logic to this, She's the one that's going to have to do this. So I'm going to go. So I went to Canada, and then afterwards, she knew from day one we want to come back. But I want to pinpoint this here, something very important. Because of being married at 23 and being very driven, I was a very driven person, very ambitious, very committed to achieving. Canada gave me so much opportunity, like instantaneously, meaning all of the kind of limitations placed on Jamaicans here, the burdensome regulations, the inefficient systems of government, all of that was removed instantaneously. So Canada was designed for a person like me, entrepreneurial, aggressive. And so in very short order, I was doing very, very well without any problems. By the time I'm 35, I'm director of finance in government. I mean, swiftly. And I start at the very bottom. But let's backtrack a little bit though, Mr. Neil. I want to point out, I made a note here, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Jackson. I don't know if he's still alive today. Mr. Jackson was my social study teacher back in secondary school at Spanish Town Secondary. And I used to have these conversations with Mr. Jackson. The man was like, Joseph, where you get them thing here from, man? And I would question all of these issues. And it dawned on me, what are we teaching our kids in school here? We're not teaching them to think, to analyze. For me, when I'm studying history and social study, I want to understand the why, the how, the motivations, the pushes and the pulls, the incentives and the disincentives, the human interaction. I want to juxtapose things. What's happening in Jamaica relative to what's happening in the US at the time, what's happening in England at the time, what's happening in China, Europe. That's me. And because of that, it kind of opened up my understanding, because I'm now searching for more than just the basic, what they want me to know. I don't want to know what you want me to know. I want to know what really happened and what that means, and how I can use that knowledge to my benefit today. How can I use the knowledge of the past to make sure I do better than my predecessors? Can you imagine? Is that the way you think, Mr. Neil?
Yes. I was actually in the process of doing that while in Jamaica when I met up on the UIC. I saw flaws in the way that we govern ourselves and how it affects us, and I was looking at better ways of doing it. I had looked at the NDM and saw that what they had proposed was better, but not quite there yet, because there was an independent study done where it showed that Mr. Golding was affiliated with some sort of gang, and that gang became an NDM affiliated gang. And I thought we need better than this. So NDM wasn't quite it yet. So looking at different government systems and so forth, I said to formulate my own until I looked at UIC and I said, but this is what we need. While I was listening to you, though, Sir Patterson, about what's going on in different countries, it came to me that one way that we use to keep ourselves comfortable in our situation is that we look at other countries that are the same like us. And we say, but them are doing it too, so we're all right. But what people don't understand is that the colonizer had colonized so many other countries and left the same broken system on them, so that it's easy for us to find the same parallels.
Absolutely.
But we don't want for ourselves.
Absolutely. Can I tell you a joke? Well, it's not a joke, really. It's serious. I've been to Ghana a few times. Ghana is, in my opinion, a big Jamaica. Ghana, just to put it in context for you, Ghana has over 30 million people. 30 million people. And trust me on this, there are 30 million Jamaicans. Apart from the Africanness of their culture, meaning the deep African roots, because they were not taken away from there. They have unique aspects to their culture because of their language and so on. But at the core of the Ghanaian is a Jamaican. All of our general mannerism is in them. When I went to Ghana, I had to study it carefully, and I studied their system of governance. Almost 100% like ours, and the same freaking outcome. The same outcome. Everything the same. Now remember, Ghana has no excuse, them have 100 times more resources than we in Jamaica. They have everything. The land, they have the land, they have the fertile soil, they have cocoa galore, they have all kinds of minerals, they have everything, but yet still poor like we. In fact, they're poorer than we in Jamaica on a GDP per capita basis. Why? How is that possible? So they're not constrained now by being a little island. And we were taught in school by our teachers and by the news media, oh no, Jamaica is just a small island. We can't do much better because we're so small. Let me adjust my words. That's a lie. Jamaica is not poor because we are small. Jamaica is a rich country, a rich colony, actually, because we still haven't become a country yet. We're still a colony in reality. We are a rich colony, that is poorly run, okay? And so Ghana, which has everything that we could ever want, is also poor because they have not recognized the importance of good governance on a scale that a micro country, Singapore, much smaller than Olawi, smaller than Ghana, smaller than Jamaica. You could fit Singapore, you could fit, oh my gosh, you could fit probably 500, 600, 700 Singapores into Ghana. I'm just guessing though, I didn't do the math on that one, right? But yet still, I guess my point is this, Mr. Neil, we have been terribly misled by our leaders, even our teachers, and I don't blame teachers on it because they were just taught to teach us foolishness. Yeah, I'm shocked, for example, and I'm digressing a bit here tonight, folks, so please bear with me. How can you have unskilled persons teaching your basic school children? That's your first recipe for disaster. And I'm not knocking my basic school teachers because God bless you. Many of you are doing the best you can with very limited resources and in many cases, very limited education yourself. But no wise leaders would ever allow that to obtain and to continue. And that's why Lee Kuan Yew insisted that at the basic school level, they want master's degrees persons who are skilled and trained in teaching young minds to bring out the best in their children. Okay, but quickly, Misha Pius, good to see you on. Sister Janet, good to see you on. Jonathan Ryder, Jensek, Claudia Barrett, good to see you on. And Jayla King, wonderful. Who are the real heroes is the conversation here tonight, and we've identified two such so far. Nani of the Maroons, and our good friend Samuel Sharp as well. So now let's take a look at the next one. No, we're going to look at another one and see if we agree that this person is indeed a true hero. Here we go.
Born in Stony Gut, St. Thomas in the 1820s, he suffered as a slave. He toiled in the hot sun, working and praying for the day he could say, "Yes, freedom come." And when that day came, the day he was free, the plan of becoming fully independent was his next feat. One he accomplished, small farmer, then landowner, to being one of 106 persons on the voters list. He was well on his way. So much so, he became a Baptist deacon in the village, a true Jamaican activist, angered by the injustices and oppression faced by the people in St. Thomas by one Governor Edward Eyre. So, he gathered his people and marched onward they did, left, right, on October 11, 1865, the day of the Morant Bay Rebellion. Over 500 people died, but not in vain. That special day spurred changes in the social and economic conditions of people not only in St. Thomas, but the entire Jamaica. The Right Excellent Paul Bogle, the man who lived and died for his people on October 24, 1865. A man of honor, a man of truth, our national hero.
So your thoughts, Mr. Neil, and on the right honorable, truly honorable, the most excellent Paul Bogle. Yes.
They are not speaking the true extent of what these persons have done, because Paul Bogle, even before leading that march, he was infamous for preaching against, using his platform and preaching against the injustice of the governor and the present government at the time. So, more than just leading a march, Paul Bogle lived the definition of being a hero. It was what he did, using his platform as a deacon. But I must say, though, that the march that you led on September 22, 2001, reminds me of this same march that Paul Bogle led. Was it 1860?
1865, yes.
Yes. Because it might not have been about, well, it was about workers' rights, because there was the no jobs mandate. Although the government did not come out and directly say deny people their jobs if they don't get the job, they were insinuating that people who did not take the jobs should not have the same rights as those who did. And I remember especially that the Minister of Education at the time did say that teachers who did not take the job would be dealt with strictly.
Yeah.
So it was a time for those persons who don't remember, and it's very short, but I realize that in politics people have very short memories. It was a time where Jamaicans in just 2021 were denied right to travel, the right to associate with. These are rights, though, that are really spoken of in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But apart from that, these are inherent rights to travel in our own country, to associate, to choose what to do with our own bodies, and we must have the right to work, to provide for ourselves. But these were rights that were under threat. And in the same way that Paul Bogle rose against the oppressive system of his time and paid for it, you, Mr. Patterson, rose against the oppression of the day, and you continue to pay for it. And I don't think that Jamaica really understands the significance of what you and the other uniters did on that day. And now we see that those persons who were benefiting financially from the proliferation of the vaccines are now being called into question. And we the things that were being said about the vaccines, and people were calling them all sort of unsavory names. We see now that these things are actually true. These vaccines were never safe.
So,
And the
we're not going to use the word too much. You know, they're going to flag us and then take down the
oh
video.
yes, that
Yeah,
word.
but your point is, go ahead, continue. Yes.
Yeah, I forgot we still do have autonomy on this thing.
We still don't have free speech. We
Yes.
still don't have free speech. Yes.
So, sorry, I get it calling me here. Hope that didn't trouble my audio.
No, I can hear you still.
We find that the same conditions that existed then do exist now in different forms. They cannot take us bodily and send us to work against our own will, but they can prevent us from working on their own whim. They can prevent us from going to the shop, going to store. There are persons who are arrested for going to the shop to buy something to eat.
Yeah.
So I see what I'm seeing is just as I identified similar things in what UIC stands for in Sam Sharp, I see no in Paul Bogle. Paul Bogle recognized that the people were being held victim and abused, and he chose to march against it. He preached against it and he marched against it. And we need to do the same now for our own sake. Because when we unite, they can arrest everybody. They can arrest everybody, so but they can arrest a few. If we need to get back our pride as a people, to find back what made us the shining example. In apartheid, Jamaica was praised for our stance against apartheid, but we are now under apartheid in our own country, and we just
Absolutely. You know, I'm hoping, Mr. Neil, that we can. I'm proposing to the Jamaican people the greatest protest ever. I would like the UIC and all Jamaicans to come together and lead the greatest protest this nation has ever seen. Let me define that protest for you. This is going to be a beautiful protest, a magnificent protest. Not a single one of us will get arrested in that protest. Not a single, well, we might still get arrested in it, but it's going to be in a different format. I am proposing the most massive protest the nation has ever seen. Here's how it's going to work. All Jamaicans who agree with what you're hearing from the UIC decides to join the UIC. Go on our website, uicjamaica.com. Click on register and say, I, Peter White, I, Misha Pius, I, Jayla King, whoever you are, want to be a member. You become a member of the movement and you pay your dues of $1,000 Jamaican a month, $250 a week, or $10 US per month, $2.50 US per week. But watch me carefully now. Watch what we're doing here. We raise our membership. Each of us go out there and find our family and friends and co-workers and bosses and employees and get them to join. And we raise that number to 500,000 Jamaicans here at home and abroad. We are now bringing in, millions of dollars as a collective. Small amount from each of us, but as a collective, a big amount. And we elect 63 UIC MP candidates. Put up the billboards everywhere. Put up the flyers everywhere. Put out the handbills everywhere. Have town hall meetings everywhere. Have workers to go door to door everywhere. Have the vehicles to carry grandmother to go vote. That is the biggest, most massive protest we could ever do. And all of us will be safe doing it. I won't have to go to jail anymore, Mr. Neil. Nobody else have to go to jail. We lead the biggest protest by putting our money where our mouth is and putting our mouth to good use by telling our neighbors and our friends, let us protest against this colonial system in Jamaica. Let us make Jamaica finally truly free by electing the People's Party. Can we do that, Mr. Neil? Can we convince our fellow Jamaicans to become 5 people online. You're watching. I want you to write in the comment section. If you believe this is the best protest we can do, type yes in the comment box right now. If you believe a protest where we simply focus on building our membership to 500,000 strong, with each of us giving $10 US or 1,000 Jamaican per month, and making ourselves so powerful they can't miss we. You'll see a sea of blue covering the country because we have now gotten our fellow Jamaicans to rise up like Nani, like Sam Sharp, like Bogle, and say enough is enough. So we don't bother now to do the foolishness anymore of going to protest on the street, asking them to give us anything. Let us take it. So we're going to take it by using their system against them. They have given us a fake democracy. Let's use it to our advantage. Let us have a ballot box revolution where we now as a people take over the system the same way that the plantocracy and the PSOJ oligarchs took over the system with their money. The PSOJ oligarchs, they bought the 2 parties, they own the 2 parties, and by extension, they own the government of Jamaica and the people of Jamaica. But just imagine if we, the people, now say, just 500,000 a week can buy back our country at the ballot box. Because when the green send their people out, and they reach out and they're walking through the community, they see the blue already there. When the orange send their people out, and they're walking down the street or driving down the street, the UIC in a big bus is already there. And we're enumerating people, we're signing people up, we are teaching people, we are mobilizing people, and we go street and lane from Portland and St. Thomas all the way to Hanover and St. James, from Clarendon and Manchester all the way to Trelawney and St. Mary, through Westmoreland and St. Elizabeth, everywhere, St. Andrew and Kingston. Can we do that? I think we can. All we're going to do, this is a protest. We are going to protest. We're going to protest by making ourselves powerful. Look what Manley and Buster did. They went and they organized the labor unions. And they tell the people, we're going to fight for your workers' rights. And they got the people to see them as their leaders. And they form an organization. And they became members of this union and gave their money to the union. Unions don't exist without money. Am I right, Mr. Neil? Do you know any union that work without money?
None at all. None at all.
And so the unions now, watch me carefully. The unions now go and negotiated with the boss. Listen to me, people. I'm going to tell you something here. The unions went and negotiated with the boss, the plantocracy, how to fool up the people to accept a minimal wage and minimal working conditions so that the thing can just settle down and be okay. And Norman Manley and Buster come out the heroes, and the people are once again shafted. The people fought for an increase in wages instead of for their freedom. What you need is your freedom, liberty, to earn as much as you can earn by your productive capacity. You don't want no artificial minimum wage or wages set for you by nobody. You want to set your own wages by understanding the relationship between rewards and effort. So you were tricked by the BITU. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. Let's look at the next. Go ahead, Mr. Neil.
I see that Jailer King asked some questions in relation to what you were saying.
Yeah.
I'd like to answer them. Jailer asked, can the UIC be our hero? How will the UIC do that? And I want to put forward to Jailer that the UIC is already you're a hero or our heroes by simply answering giving the solutions to the problems. So our freedom was stolen from us. We were bought out. Our parties were bought out, and they in turn buy us out so that they can prevent us from living the lives or a fulfilling life, prevent us from being the best that we can be. They have robbed our economy, they rob our education, our healthcare, they rob even the way that we think, so that we are not, even though we claim to be free, we are not in full possessions of our mental faculties. And that's just a fact. No, the UIC, by our manifesto, anyone here watching who has never read our manifesto, go to uicjamaica.com, look at it, our 10-point plan, even the very way we structure ourselves. You can check out our constitution. We have provided the answer to all of these things, to the economy, to the education, to the healthcare, to your own personal sovereignty, to being the best that you can be in your own country. To get rid of that system that controls and eliminates you from participating in your economy, from participating in achieving your own goals so far as you want to go. Other countries are doing it, and Jamaica can do it too. But the system that was created by the plantocracy, you see, they tell us that they give us freedom, but then go and do a sneaky thing, right? And they gave us two parties, really, that are really the colonists in modern form, the colonizers in modern form, and they're funded by colonizers who are uninterested in money. No, we have answered that, and because we have answered that, we are already the heroes. Now it's up to us Jamaicans to be our own heroes now, and to plug into the system that is provided by the UIC. What the UIC is not, is that we are not a party like JNP and PNP who come and say, vote for me and I will do this for you. We already show that this is what we can achieve by the plans that we put forward. Now it is for Jamaicans to come on board, to spread the word, to volunteer, to donate, so that together we can do this. We're not here to say that I, Chase Neely, if you vote for me, promise you this and this and this. Mr. Patterson not here to say, vote for me, Joseph Patterson, to be your savior. We are saying this is what we can achieve if we collaborate, if we work together. So how can the UIC do this? The UIC can do none of this if you watching don't get involved. And the first way to do that is to go to uicjamaica.com, join as a member, look at the different the tab that says volunteer, look at the different committees that you want to be a part of. Reach out to us, and so we can work together now to build the Jamaica that we deserve. So that's the only way UIC will be able to do this, if we do it. So UIC already is the hero now. Now it's time for us to be the hero. And if we, so that's it.
Well said. Well said, Chief Neil. I have to change the name now. Chief Neil. I see a comment here from Jailer King. Says we need to get rid of Andrew Holness. I completely disagree. Our goal is not to get rid of Andrew Holness. Our goal is to get rid of the colonial system of governance that is represented by Mark Golden and Andrew Holness, that is represented by the two colonial parties, that is protected and preserved and sponsored by the PSOJ oligarch. If we focus on getting rid of any one of them, we will miss the mark. We've been doing that for years. We got rid of PJ. We got rid of Michael. We got rid of Siaga. We got rid of Bruce. We got rid of Portia. We're not here to get rid of an individual. We're here to get rid of a system. So the UIC is not, we're not fighting against the two colonial parties. We're fighting against the system that they are here to preserve, that they are here to protect. And they have been doing a marvelous job of protecting that system. And if we wake up now and fight the real fight is the system. The real fight is not to swap out Andrew for Mark. The real fight is not to allow them to trick us again into seeking to get rid of one and then be left with the other, and then get rid of the other and be left with the one. We now need to get rid of it. So we're going to lead the biggest protest Jamaica has ever seen, the most massive protest. And it's a ballot box revolution protest where 500,000 of we as members here at yard and abroad. If you're listening to me tonight, tell every member of your family, every person at your workplace that is a Jamaican, everybody, mother, brother, sister, uncle, nephew, niece, neighbor, enemy, friends, tell all of them, let us lead a massive protest against this bad system of governance and get rid of the two colonial parties and their sponsor, the PSOJ oligarchy, not by getting rid of them as persons, but getting rid of them of controlling us and controlling us through the system. And the way to do that is to join the UIC, volunteer in the UIC, and pay your membership dues. Now watch me carefully. Volunteering is easy. All of us don't have to be volunteering as head cook and bottle washer in any particular department. All of us can be the mouthpiece for the UIC. Go to your friend and family and say, join the movement. And when you join the movement, follow up with the movement. Be a part of our operations in one form or the other. And let's reach as many Jamaicans as possible. But we have to move on now to our next national hero. Let's hear about this one.
George William Gordon, now Right Excellent George William Gordon, national hero, was born in 1815, the son of a Scottish father and an enslaved Jamaican mother. He got a call to make the world a better place, and for that he was never forgiven. You should know then that conditions in Jamaica then were just unbelievable. People were suffering. 311,000 persons in 1838 enslaved, received their freedom and were just thrown outside. And what George William Gordon did, he bought lands and he cut up the lands and allowed the poor, the dispossessed, to have access to the land. And his colleagues did not like that. He chastised the governor in meetings right at the space that the governor needed to do more for the people. And the governor didn't like it, called him a mischief maker. And this is the space where George William Gordon came to, as it were, give up himself because he heard they were looking for him. And from here, he was taken to St. Thomas, where he was tried and hanged on the 23rd of October, 1865. And he reached the Friday, and they hanged him the Monday morning. But before he was hanged, he asked for permission to write a letter to his dear wife, Lucy. He had married this lady, Shannon, Lucy Shannon. He married her, and he asked that he could write a letter, and they allowed him to write the letter. That would have been Sunday night, early Monday morning. He wrote the letter to say that he was innocent. And if anything that he did that was bad, was to help poor people.
Your thoughts, Mr. Neil, on our goodly friend?
George William Gordon is the kind of legislator we need nowadays. We need MPs who will stand up in the legislative and talk really for the rights of the people. We don't have that now because we have a partisan system. Mm-hmm. We have a system where party loyalty is more important than loyalty to the people who elect these same reps in the hope that they will represent them. George Gordon was really executed. There wasn't even any strong evidence that he was linked to the rebellion that Paul Bogle led, but he was friends with Paul Bogle,
He
and
was
because
guilty. He was guilty by association.
he's associated, yes, he was associated,
But
and then
the history though, what happened is he had a personal rift with Governor Eyre, and so the governor used the opportunity to get rid of him. He was a thorn in the governor's side. It's like current day leaders in the two colonial parties where they engineer things. So, for example, how they engineered, getting rid of the lady in Northeast Sentan and bring in the gentleman there, cutthroat thing. So he engineered the execution of George William Gordon because of personal hatred for him. In fact, it reminds me of some people that were members of the UIC who claimed they believe in the vision, mission, and values of the movement. And then because of their personal hatred of one of us, they then proceeded to do very nasty things to try to bring down some of us and try to bring down the movement. Do you see parallels there?
yes, I do see those parallels, but I'm not so sure that this is really led by or motivated by a hatred for any one person in the UIC. I think that what really is being masked is more a love for self and own way, because there are persons who come into the UIC and because they see it as a new movement, a new party, they think they can just do whatever they want. And whenever the party policies are enforced or they can't get their own way, they lash out. And though they are aware that this is a movement that is intended to liberate even themselves and liberate all of Jamaica, they would put their own personal preferences, their own hurt feelings for some minor. Well, let me not minimize anybody else's emotions, but in comparison to what is better for the entire Jamaica, they would rather put that above their own progress and well-being. So you see, we have a sellout mentality as Africans. I don't know if it's genetic, but to the point that we sell out our own selves.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
What is going
We will cut off our nose to spite our face. So, for example, right now there are people who were once members of the UIC who are out there trying to do over what we have done already. They're trying to build another political party. They're trying to form alliances by first dividing the UIC and trying to detract from the UIC and then saying they want to form a union, an alliance. The UIC was built to form a union of independent thinkers, and they're trying. But I love something about George William Gordon. Notice what he did. He knew that the former slaves were still enslaved. They were thrown out, as the author said, the narrator said. They were thrown out, and that's it. When we were given this fake freedom, we were just thrown out on the streets. You're free now. Free to do what? You're free to come and beg a job from your former slave master and from others who are now in the space, the plantocracy, the merchant class, the manufacturing class, those who own the assets and resources. So when the slave was freed, he was simply tossed out to now go fend for himself, dead for hungry, or come beg me a job, which is exactly where we are today still. But also, George William Gordon understood the importance of property ownership. And so he went and took his own money. And by the way, Jamaicans love that too much, They love the freeness thing. They want a good leader to them is one who come and give them something for free. But that's not the point I want to make here tonight, because that's not the kind of leaders you must want. You want leaders that will tell you the truth. It's truth that sets you free, not handouts. So what he did, though, to help the slaves, the former slaves, chattel slaves, they're no mental slaves, but not chattel anymore. He bought land and divided up the land and gave that to the slave, the former slaves, so they could now have tenure, they could have some kind of property ownership. By the way, that's why Paul Bogle was able to vote back then, because he was now a property owner. And the way they did the system, remember that they made sure the slaves don't have, the former slaves don't have any property. And by doing that, you then deny them access to certain things, including voting back in those days. So Paul Bogle could vote. So he was risking a lot to, risk his right to vote, risk his prestige, risk his position in society. So notice, Sam Sharp was an upper class slave. Paul Bogle was an upper class modern day slave, not the old time chattel slave, but in the new system. He was upper class. George William Gordon was also upper class. So these men had a lot to lose, and they put that on the line. I want you to kind of notice some of the features of real heroes here, okay? And he understood the value of land reparation, Mr. Neil, something which the UIC has placed front and center as a cornerstone policy. We are here to defend the life, liberty, and property rights of all Jamaicans. And one of your key property rights is that the land that was stolen from your ancestors be returned to you. Your comments, Mr. Neil.
Well, as you had said before, there is no freedom without property. If you own nothing, then you're not free. And the former slave owners realized, because they were slave owners because they had property. Even the very persons they were liberating, they considered them their property. No, they knew that by letting them go wild, dash them away, or throwing them out, that they would be creating a citizenry of instability, that it would end up in riots and disagreements, and then we would end up killing each other off, and we see that happening now, because in a way, we still are thrown out without certain rights. Jamaicans don't have the right to get jobs in their own country, especially if they come from certain places. The education system doesn't ensure that our students are suitably qualified when leaving school, and so they cannot join the job world. So we just throw them out. And we have people in society, same as back then, that are not paid attention to, and they're just allowed to just be without having anything for themselves. No property, nothing attached to themselves to that build self-worth. And if you have no worth, neither in the eyes of the government, not in the eyes of the populace, not in your own eyes, then you become less than human. And that is what Mr. Gordon was pointing out. These people were less than human because they didn't even have themselves. And they had nothing with which to show that they, in and of themselves, were recognized as sovereign people, as worthy people, just because they were inherently human and of worth. They didn't have it. And so that's one way to destroy a people, and it still happens today. Our people are destroying ourselves through crime, through scamming, drugs, because our people have no worth. Those who govern us have not given us any worth. We need to take ourselves now.
Well said, Mr. Neil. We're going to break for a short commercial break, if you will. I noticed some people asking about our Christmas banquet, so here goes.
Hi everyone, this is Charlotte, and I hope you're doing great. I'm just stopping by to say hello and to remind you that UIC's annual Christmas fundraising banquet will be December 14th, 2024, starting at 5 p.m. This year, our location will be Summit Kingston, formerly called Knutsford Court Hotel, which is at 16 Chelsea Avenue, Kingston 10. As you may know, UIC Jamaica is 100% committed to good governance and aims to unite, liberate, and empower our people. If you desire to see Jamaica become the paradise it should be, clean, safe, beautiful, and orderly, then your contribution of 10,000 Jamaican dollars or 65 US per adult and 5,000 Jamaican dollars or 35 US per child will help us to provide a new leadership, a new system for a new Jamaica. We promise an evening with lots of fun, lively entertainment, great speeches, and delicious food. While it would be my greatest desire to see you all in person, I know some may not make it home for Christmas, but your donation will give someone less fortunate the opportunity to attend. Thank you so much for taking part in helping us to educate and work with our citizens to restore and in some cases rebuild our beautiful country. Here are your options to purchase your ticket. You can go to www.uicjamaica.com and pay online, or you can send payment via Western Union, MoneyGram, Zelle, Cash Out, or bank transfer. Call 876-293-0812 for additional information. To RSVP, you can email us at info@uicjamaica.com, or you can WhatsApp us at 876-293-0812. Thanks a million for making this possible. One Jamaica, stronger together.
All right. Thank you very much for that commercial break. That was the voice of my lovely wife, Charlotte Wissado Patterson. When I grew up, I wanted to chat like her. Anyways, okay. So, all right. So now let's turn our attention to another one of our great leaders. But before we do that, I want to, what do I want to do here? I want to talk about the possibility of other leaders. This leader coming up is a very, 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 very important, leader to me for a number of reasons, which will come out in our discussion shortly. But I want to hear from you. I think somebody mentioned, Mr. Neil, that Bob Marley should be a national hero. What are your thoughts on that?
If we are going to add anyone to the list of heroes, that person would have had to give a contribution that is on par with that of the 5 true heroes that we have there. I would not say that Bob Marley's contribution, though iconic and significant, would be on the same level that allowed us to come forth as a nation of free people, because we know that we're not truly free, but to where we are now recognized as a nation and not a colony. I don't think that Bob Marley's contribution is on that level where he would have given of his life for others. Bob Marley benefited from his music. It may have come from a place of pureness, but did he do all of this for his own self, as in expressing what is in him for his benefit, monetary benefit, or was this a true sacrifice on behalf of the people? So I would not go to the extent of saying that Bob Marley should be a national hero, though he is a hero in his own right. I would not designate him a national hero for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Very, very important thoughts. I would love to hear from the rest of you online. If you think that Bob Marley should be a national hero, please type in the comment section, Bob, to say that you believe Bob Marley should be a national hero. Otherwise, I will take it that's a no. But thank you for those very, very constructive thoughts, Mr. Neil. I just want to remind us of the definition of a hero. And there might be other definitions, but one of them is that a hero is a person who is admired for their courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. So admired for their courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. Most of us, when we think of heroes, and I agree with Mr. Neil in terms of a hero is normally somebody who does something that is extremely courageous, that is, more altruistic than not. But according to this definition, a person can just have some outstanding achievements and noble qualities that is highly regarded and respected by those around. Now, on that measure, Bob Marley might very well be considered a national hero. But let's look at him now briefly. before we go to our next already designated national hero, Marcus Garvey. Bob Marley was a unifying figure in the country. He tried very hard, in fact, and put himself at risk and was shot in the process while he was trying to kind of say unite. Now, of course, Bob Marley was not as enlightened as we are here in the UIC, because he would, not call for unity between the two colonial parties, which was impossible, but rather unity of the nation around good governance, which is really what Marcus Garvey was fighting for. He would not have said it in those terms, because I'm giving it that kind of coloration now. But the unity that we need as a people is not two parties uniting, because that's dangerous. And they have united before on issues against us. During the recent pandemic, they united against the people of Jamaica. Oftentimes you have three parts. You have the PSOJ oligarchs uniting with the two colonial parties and telling them to follow a particular path. I get very anxious when I hear the PSOJ making recommendations and telling the two parties to get on board, because I know what that means. It won't bode well for we the people. It will bode well for them. For example, during the pandemic, you might have noticed that while we were suffering, the banks made billions. The banks that funded their parties, the big cruise ships had their way. The big retail establishments had their way. It's just the small man that was oppressed and suppressed and who suffered. When they come up with new crime plans that are sanctioned by the PSOJ, it is the underprivileged and marginalized in our society who suffer for them to be able to have a safer environment in their very high walls and in their beautiful homes, enjoying champagne and caviar, while the rest of us can't even buy grocery. So me don't trust them, and I don't want you to trust them either. So let's now look now on another national figure, and arguably my most favorite national hero. Me love Danny already for what she has done and so on, but this man here have some things I need for us to talk about. Let's hear it.
A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. No one remember who Marcus Garvey. No one remember.
A boy of humble beginnings, taking his first steps towards a life decorated and defined by the search for a proud Black identity. The journey began on August 17, 1887, in a rural district nestled in the Garden Parish of St. Anne, where the union of a mason and a domestic worker birthed a living legacy of Black self-empowerment.
When you hear him describe his mother, Sarah Jane Garvey, she had a different kind of influence on him. I think that he inherited a lot of her sense of compassion.
Marcus also inherited much from his father, Marcus Messiah Garvey Sr. Together, his parents gave him a strong foundation, starting at 32 Market Street in St. Anne's Bay. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Pan-African Movement, the Negro Factories Corporation, the Black Star Liner Shipping Company, all symbols of achievement to which Garvey could lay claim. But his life was more than the public platform familiar to most. Garvey was equal parts Pan-Africanist and father, equal parts orator and husband, scholar and son, national hero and lifetime student. As a young boy, Garvey developed a love of reading, first from his father's private library, and later the more extensive collection of his godfather Alfred Burroughs. An apprenticeship with Burroughs at age 14 provided a platform for literary expression through the printing press. It's an influence that would find expression in several newspaper developments and publications throughout Garvey's life. Even as he trod the path of visionary, philosopher, and scholar, Marcus Garvey was a family man. After a long courtship, he married Amy Ashwood in a private Catholic church ceremony, followed by an elaborate public ceremony and reception at Liberty Hall on Christmas Day, 1919. The union didn't last. But Garvey found love and family life again with his longtime secretary, Amy Jakes. The two married in July 1922 and had two sons, Marcus Jr. and Julius.
You can see letters that they wrote to each other when his sons were in Jamaica and he was in England. He has nicknames for them. He speaks to them the same way a loving father would speak to any child.
From the dirt tracks in a small rural community to a global stage promoting change, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey was the epitome of ambition.
When you look at his background versus what he was able to achieve in a very, very short time period, you have to recognize that it was ambition that was driving him. But most importantly, he had ambition, not just for himself, but for people of his race. He wanted Black people to be liberated in every sense of the word, not just physically, but mentally, economically, socially, and so on.
On June 10, 1940, a nation lost a hero. Humanity lost a world changer. Marcus Garvey was finally laid to rest in 1964 in Jamaica after 52 short years. The man from St. Anne's Bay had given Black people a new way of looking at themselves. He'd told them to embrace their identity, that they could achieve anything.
Up your mighty race! Accomplish what you will!
No one remembers old Marcus Garvey. No one remembers old Marcus Garvey.
Oh, you're muted, sir. Mr. Patterson, you're muted.
I'm talking to myself. Let me see if I can repeat all of that oratory. Marcus Garvey, one of our greatest national heroes, somebody I admire profusely. I have studied in depth. I love the man with all of my heart because of what he has done, what he tried to do, and what he represents. Marcus Garvey is, in my opinion, possibly the greatest Jamaican and one of the greatest world leaders we have ever seen on the planet. If you look at what Marcus Garvey achieved at the time when he achieved it, under the circumstances that he achieved it, you will understand how magnificent of a human being he was. And by the way, he wasn't perfect. Like all of us, he had personal flaws. I saw somebody talking about Bob Marley, for example. Bob Marley had flaws, but there's no denying the tremendous achievement of Bob Marley as a person, what he has done, and how he has impacted the lives of many people around the world, and how he has represented Jamaica and brought Jamaica to light in a certain way to many, many people in a positive way around the world. So we won't allow persons' shortcomings, because if we were to look at everybody's shortcomings, then nobody would be worthy of anything, right? Because we all have flaws here and there. But look at the general trend of their lives and the real impact they had on society. And Marcus Garvey, what a tremendous impact he has had on our society. What do you think of the man, Mr. Neil?
I dare say, sir, I think Marcus Garvey was somewhat supernatural based on what he accomplished. This poor young man of very little means was able to set the entire establishment in Jamaica and the USA against him. What many people don't know is that the US government tried to get Marcus Garvey behind jail 5 times. 5 times they tried to get some charges on him, and they finally got through with that mail fraud thing, which there are many indications that that was a bogus charge, by the way. But they tried to frame even the public perception of Marcus Garvey in such a way to discredit him, so that they could in turn discredit the Black Pride movement, the Back to Africa movement. And I want to point out, that many Black persons were part of this, because in America, there was the move for Black people to become part of the mass establishment. The former enslaved Americans wanted to integrate into American society, but Marcus Garvey rubbished that idea and said that we must build our own identity as Blacks, and he looked to Africa and he looked within ourselves. He pointed us to look within ourselves as created by God, just as the white man, that every other race achieve, and therefore we can too. And those Black persons who wanted to integrate within American society conspired against him too. And then we had the government conspiring against him. We had Jamaican government, which was not really of Jamaica, because it was really run by the plantocracy. But there were Jamaicans here who were actually working against Marcus Garvey. But yet, despite all of that, despite where he was coming from and the opposition that he caused, Marcus Garvey made such an impact on the world that still lasts today in certain organizations. The African Union, though corrupt as it is now, was based on Marcus Garvey's ideas. After centuries of separation in the African continent, that led to even chattel slavery, because Black people sell out each other. Marcus Garvey's ideas, and I don't want to state this very small enough, Marcus Garvey's ideas was able, for the first time in centuries and millennia, cause even on a minuscule level, all 50 African states to unite as one organization, African Union. This is this little boy from St. Anne's Bay. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, when you think of his accomplishment, by the way, it's bigger than Bob Marley. It's bigger than Usain Bolt. We have lost sight of it over time because our misleaders have been working stealthily to move us away from where Marcus Garvey was trying to take us. Many Jamaicans are not aware that the two parties that many so cherish came into being to counteract, to replace, to obliterate Marcus Garvey and his views and his ideas. You see, Marcus Garvey was more than just back to Africa in terms of moving back to the continent. He was about back to Africa in realizing our Africanness and rebuilding ourselves as a people. Marcus Garvey was trying to get us to realize that we are Africans. Just like how you have Germans who belong to Germany, they might travel elsewhere, they might live in Australia or even move to South St. Elizabeth. And many Germans lived in South St. Elizabeth. That's why you have the color that you have down there. But they're still Germans. You talk to anyone, they say, I'm a German. I'm an Englishman. I'm a Frenchman. I'm a Russian. But we don't do that. We call ourselves Black, or we allow ourselves to be called Black. And we call ourselves niggers and Negro and all that kind of stuff. But Marcus Garvey wanted us to realize that, like, the German is German, the African is African. Like the Englishman is from England, the African is from Africa. So I'm a proud African. And I'm careful to use the word proud because I had nothing to do with it. So it's not like I achieved anything by being African. I didn't achieve my Africanness, but I'm a born African. Yes, my blood may be tainted somewhat because, we kind of mix up in Jamaica and around the world too. So I might have some strain of something else. But I identify with what I resemble most, and it's my Africanness. Yeah. And so what Marcus Garvey wanted us to do was a few things. He wanted us to remember, he wanted us to conclude, he wanted us to accept that we're Africans and that we belong to Africa, that Africa is our heritage, Africa is our land. Even if we're in the diaspora, even if we occupy a space called Jamaica or Florida or London or Ontario, he wanted us to know and believe that we're African. That's number one. Number two, he wanted us to understand that being African does not in any way make you less than anyone. What other men have done, we can do it too. Now, here's something we can do. We, the Africans of Jamaica, we have created a new system of governance. There are many people who believe we have come from far, you know, as a human race. We used to have strong men who controlled a region or a collective. So the best warrior usually become the chief. So the man who chop up the most people, for example, the man who was the most valiant in battle and could beat up everybody else, we say, yeah, man, make him the chief. If him can do that, him the chief. And so we had a dictator by force. Whoever had the most power, force, we made him a dictator and he oversee things. Later on, we kind of allowed the witch doctors somewhat, because the witch doctors were a bit crafty. They studied human behavior and psychology and studied the astrology and, you know, all of that, and could then make predictions. If you don't, it's going to get dark or whatever. And so we had priests who became powerful, potentates, priests. Then the priest, you know, to make things a little bit more acceptable, they crowned kings. And so you had kings who got their crowns from popes. Hope you're following me here. Now, all of these systems are man-made. And God gave them. God didn't say, the man who killed the most people, make him your leader, or the man who is the best witch doctor or priest or pope, make him your leader, or the one who says he's there by divine right because he was born into a particular family and it's called a royal family, and he now becomes the dictator as your king. And then later on now, we have parliamentary systems of separation of powers between the royal family and the elected officials under the protection of the lords, who were appointed because of their privileged status to make sure they keep things in order, and so on. In the colonies, you had governors who were appointed by the king. There are all kinds of systems that have been throughout history and society, governance models. And then you have the American Revolution, and you have the first constitutional republic in the US, where they fall just short. They said all men were created equal, but then they didn't quite mean men of other racial backgrounds or men who had a different gender than male. Follow me carefully here now. I want you to understand where we're going here. But that system had its advantages because, like the French, it recognized that we have certain inalienable rights, like the right to life, the right to liberty, and the American says the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm going to join the last piece there. Property rights. If you want to enjoy happiness, you need to have property. When you can sit on your veranda and put up your foot and drink a beer or a glass of lemonade, that's you now enjoying happiness. When you can walk through your gate and know, say, fear this, and nobody can come and take it from you, that is happiness. So I want to replace the part about happiness with property rights. Now, that system devolved into partisan politics, coming from the parliamentary system of the British. And that partisan system has a primary purpose. The goal of partisan politics, believe it or not, is really to control the masses. It is to give the masses the feeling that they are participating in their governance, the feeling that they are participating in their governance, while ensuring that those who are in the elite group controls that governance. You understand me, Mr. Neil? So partisan politics is to give you the feeling. Now, how do they do that? They do that by ensuring that though you will go to the polls and vote, they control who you will be voting for. And if you should make a mistake and somehow somebody slipped through the cracks, they will find every which way to crucify that person, either by the law or by assassination. So they will have lawfare to kind of get you out, or they will use an assassination to get you out. Now, we, the UIC, the Africans, inspired by Marcus Garvey, we have designed a better system, a more perfect governance model, and we call it a non-partisan constitutional republic, a system which denies the elite the power to control the people with the money that they extract from them. So we're separating private money, big money, bad money from the electoral process, so that you can now have true representatives who by design must serve the interest of their constituents, because we have designed it to create those kind of checks and balances, incentives and disincentives. Your thoughts, Mr. Neil?
I must agree with you, sir, that the partisan system has been set up to really divide and deny the people. Until the monarchy had established itself, they did not bring about the party system. And so the party system was brought about to let the people feel comfortable with retaining the monarch, while the monarch continued to influence policy and operations through the appointed lords. But the people are divided now, so they cannot no longer unite against any misdeeds by government, because now they have one party that believes one thing and another party that believes another. In fact, Jefferson, one of the American presidents, did warn the Americans about adopting parties, and said that parties would be to the detriment of American society. They did not listen. But I want to point out
Go ahead.
My wife is now in Samoa. Yes, I'm a little lonely. But I did some research on Samoa. Now, Samoan traditional government before they were colonized by Britain and Germany, it was more of a tribal thing where the head of the family was elected, called the Matai, and then the different heads of family would come together and plan with the village or their former local government for the development of the village. And then these groups now would elect one amongst themselves to do the necessary on behalf of all Samoans. They have been colonized and now they follow Westminster system, and corruption has gone up since. Yeah. It was not so before partisan politics and Westminster government, just to show how the system destroys what was there before.
And many Jamaicans today believe in partisan. Like they've been brainwashed into thinking this is the only way. I can't think of another way to run a government. You must have parties. You must have a partisan system. The UIC says no. And we have taken the time to design a quality system, a non-partisan system that will ensure we move away now from seeing ourselves as the enemy and once again unite as a people. That's what Marcus Garvey wanted. He was not as articulate in this particular piece as we are today, because as you know, we progress, we grow. Some people are stuck where Marcus Garvey was stuck, and that's the problem. So if you were to go to, like, for example, those who still carry the banner of his party, the PPP, they have lost their way because they get carried away with some elements of Garveyism and cannot see the bigger picture. And so they lose out. Now the UIC has to carry the next step. We have to progress. We have to build upon the shoulders of giants. And we start with the giant of Nani, to the giant of Sam Sharp, to the giant of Bogle, to the giant of Gordon, and to the giant of Marcus Garvey. And now we are here with the giant of the UIC, where we're now pulling all the pieces together, moving all the cobweb, washing away all the dirt, sweeping away all the corruption, and making plain to the Jamaican people for the first time in our history, so we can understand where we're coming from, what was done to us, what is now being done to us, and what we must do about it. And for us to get out of this, we have to now own our own party to end partisan politics. We have to own our own movement to end the corrupt system with a new system of good governance. We have to trust ourselves now and don't trust our lives anymore to the plans and strictures of the colonizers. We can say no more to their constitution, no more to their way of thinking, and liberate ourselves. And that's why the UIC is built on 3 primary principles: to unite the people around good governance, to liberate the people from the mindset, the destructive mindset and destructive systems of colonization, and to empower the people with true education so we can build a powerful nation of free people. There are 2 more so-called national heroes we have to talk about tonight. And so I'm going to introduce you to the first of the 2, and I'm going to ask that you help us to determine whether or not these 2 men deserve to be numbered with the national heroes of our country. Let's take a look now on the first one, which will be Norman Washington Manley, a name that many of us think fondly of. If only we knew what we were being fond of.
Miss,
Yes, teacher.
I don't really know much about Norman Washington Manley, other than that he is one of our national heroes. Can you tell us more about him?
Sure, but I want you all to listen very carefully, okay? Norman Washington Manley was born at Roxborough, Manchester on July 4th, 1893. He was a brilliant scholar, which meant that he did extremely well in school and later went on to be a lawyer.
It was Norman Manley's expertise as an attorney in the criminal, civil, and appeal courts that laid the foundation for what was to be his life's work in Jamaica's political development.
Okay, I think we have a little bit of a challenge here. We'll see if we can fix that. Let's try that again. One more time. I think we had the wrong one that popped up there. So we're going to try to do this again. Here we go.
In Roxborough, Manchester, is a museum dedicated to telling the story of the life and work of the Right Honourable Norman Washington Manley. You will find it nestled on a hillside at the place of his birth. Once inside, you will be captivated by intriguing information on his years as a soldier, athlete, scholar, statesman, and advocate. At the museum, you can read about how Norman Manley supported the cause of the workers at the time of the labor troubles in 1938. His advocacy took on a more defined role when he rose to lead the newly formed People's National Party (PNP) in 1938 and remained as president until his retirement in 1969. Norman Washington Manley became chief minister after the 1955 election and premier in 1958, the same year Jamaica joined the West Indies Federation. A faithful supporter of the Federation, Manley put the issue to the people, holding a referendum in 1961 to decide if the country should remain in the Federation. The answer was no, and Manley arranged for Jamaica's orderly withdrawal. Manley kept himself busy with the things he was very passionate about, leaving behind an extensive legacy, such as his role in obtaining universal adult suffrage in 1944 and developing a new constitution for independent Jamaica. And so, in 1954, he led efforts to secure executive powers for elected representatives. It was also under Norman Manley's leadership that Jamaica achieved full internal self-government in 1959, a precursor to political independence that would come 3 years later. Manley's dedicated service to Jamaica earned him the Order of National Hero in 1969. Norman Manley died on September 2, 1969.
All right, let's talk about Norman Washington Manley. What are your thoughts on this national hero, Mr. Neil? And it looks like we're having another guest as well. They're trying to connect. We'll see how that goes soon. Yes. Oh, before you speak, Mr. Neil, I want to thank Mr. Peter White for his acknowledgement of the soothing and thorough advertisement promoting the UIC's Christmas fundraiser gala on the 14th of December. He says, bravo, well put together. I'll extend your kind words to Mrs. Patterson. And Juliet is reminding us that the UIC is for workfare instead of welfare. Very well said. One of our other very key cornerstone policy of not developing a welfare mindset in Jamaica, but building a solid workfare program. Wonderful. Mr. Clifton Lawrence says, I would love UIC to use Bob Marley's song, Get Up, Stand Up, for Your Right as an intro for any one of our programs. Thank you. That's a lovely song. And we have actually used it on the road before, but we can't use it normally because of copyright issues. We would have to get permission, and that is proving very difficult with, with the Marley family for obvious reasons. I also want to notice Jamflick's comment. Jamflick says, UIC needs to use more collaborative language. The tendency to refer to groups with terms like lose their way puts the UIC on the proverbial pedestal. Thank you, Jamflix, for sharing those thoughts with us. Sometimes we speak very freely and clearly, but I appreciate the need to be diplomatic to ensure that we are as inclusive as possible. In fact, I tell you this, I want to invite all of those who have left the movement for one reason or another, whatever your reasons are, as long as you believe in the vision, mission, values, message, and objective of the UIC, you are welcome into the movement, wherever you are. So you may have left on the false pretense, because sometimes we hear things and we take it as gospel and believe in it, and it is not true. Or you might have had valid concerns, which you have now found out the right answers to them, and you realize that leaving or disparaging the movement was erroneous. You're more than welcome back to the movement. But when we're talking about history, though, we tend to have to refer to the things that happen. And it is a fact that those who currently are leading the People's Political Party that Marcus Garvey started have lost their way. They are not advocating for what Marcus Garvey truly advocated for. And if they're doing so, they're doing it in a way that undermines what he's trying to achieve. All the so-called splinter groups that are out there, different groups like the UIC, who is trying to fix Jamaica, we now have an opportunity to unite to get that done. And it's unfortunate when any one of these groups decide that the best way to get their work done is to disparage the UIC. And we've seen much of that. And it is unhealthy and it is not useful. The best thing for us to do is to unite on principles and policies and to make sure we unite fully in fixing the problem and not have a fake unity that allows us to simply serve the interest of those who already colonized our people. All right, back to Mr. Norman Manley. Mr. Neal, your thoughts on the goodly gentleman.
Yes, Mr. Manley, I would think in terms of the definition of a hero accomplishing with significant achievements, Mr. Manley would have been a hero in that he was an accomplished athlete, being a soldier, being a Rhodes Scholar, and so forth. So we could look at him as a hero in that regard. However, I would not quantify him as a national hero, even though that clip said that the language used would show that he navigated Jamaica into into independence. History does show that Mr. Manley chose to retain some colonial aspects within Jamaica's governance. Although they did, although he and Bustamante, who we have not looked at yet, did look at the American system of governance when they were looking at what an independent Jamaica would look like. They chose not to go that way. So both of them are equally culpable. Norman Manley chose.
Pause a minute. You make a point here that I don't want us to miss. The Americans made their declaration in 1776. We're now talking about 1962. That's almost 17, 18, 19, almost 200 years. That's all. Just 15 years shy of 200 years. So they had 200 years to look at a system that says, we do not want to be under any monarchy. We want a system that sees the individual as sovereign and that creates a sovereign state where the individual is nobody's property, nobody's ward, nobody's subject. And Norman Manley decided that a system that keeps us as a form of subject would be the preferred system for Jamaica. Continue with your thoughts.
Yes, so I want to point it out, and we can all do our own research, that they actually examined the American system and determined that it was not best for Jamaica. Let us jump forward now. I want to put forward to the people listening now that the Constitutional Review Committee also looked at the American system during their deliberations. Read the minutes, and they also determined that the American system, which would afford Jamaicans more liberty, would not work in Jamaica. What criteria they used to come to that conclusion? We can ask them. No, I am not advocating for the American system because it too has its own ways of subjugating the people. But the thing is, our politicians from then, from Manley till now, would have had access to different modes of governance, would have examined them and said, no, we don't want them. We want this one to subjugate the people. But I want to put forward to the people too that not only did Manley choose to keep a colonial system, he made the system of governance worse. Why? because colluding with Bustamante, who we will also look at, these people chose to change around the total way of how senators are appointed in the UK and make it totally partisan. In the United Kingdom, the senators, those who review the law passed by the partisan House of Representatives, they are not a partisan body. These senators are people who have eminent positions, whether they were born into the aristocracy as lords and ladies, or they achieved some sort of high position through their own industries, whether the arts, the sciences, and so forth. These are the people who are appointed to become senators in the UK, and they have
For life.
many senators.
For life.
Okay?
They're appointed for life as well.
They're appointed for life, and there are many to bring a varied view, a wholesome view, and holistic view on the laws that are passed by the partisan House of Parliament. What did Norman Manley choose? He chose, along with the other constructors of the Jamaican governance, the Jamaican constitution, to have whoever is elected, whoever has the majority of the House of Representatives and becomes Prime Minister, to appoint 13 senators loyal to party and have the leader of the opposition appoint 8. And I use the word appoint because although it is the Governor General who appoints, the Governor General cannot say no to the appointments. And if he says no and they insist, he has to go forward. So in effect, it's them appoint them. So we have made the system worse so that the checks and balances that would have been in the original colonizing people holding us down, even that was removed. And we say that these people are heroes. I beg to differ. They might have been heroes in their achievements, personal achievements, but they shouldn't be regarded as national heroes for us as a nation.
Thank you, Mr. Neil. Mr. Rockwell Madison says, while no one is beyond the criticism, it might be counterproductive to berate or disparage some of our leaders, especially those beloved. You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Mr. Madison, you're very correct that we catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And it's very unfortunate that many Jamaicans have been caught as flies with the honey of lies. A part of being the UIC, you see, is this uncanny honesty that we have with the people. And the truth is, it may in fact make it harder for us to achieve our immediate goal of being elected, but will make it much easier for us to govern because of our transparency and honesty when we're elected. The people must come to know that the UIC will not pull punches when it comes on to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I know most Jamaicans love Michael Manley, and there are merits to loving Michael Manley. For example, very charismatic leader, a leader who showed empathy, who connected with the people at the heartstring level. But it takes courage, it takes intellect, and it takes honesty to tell the people the truth about the effectiveness of Michael Manley's policies, Michael Manley's approach to geopolitics and diplomacy, and the impact that have had on the people, which have been largely more negative than the positives which are posited about him. For example, the UIC will always take the road of that uncanny honesty to ensure the people have the truth, and we just have to deal with it. Now, one of the things that might happen as a result is that the UIC, let me make it be more specific, I may never get elected because I didn't put out enough honey. But I can tell you this, I would rather not be elected than to be elected on false pretense and then not be able to deliver to the people of Jamaica. Because you see, to build a new Jamaica, honesty will be critical. One of the reasons why we can't fix the crime problem in Jamaica is because those who are leading us must be dishonest. They can never tell you the truth about the crime problem in Jamaica. So they can tell you all kinds of stories. They can come with new fanciful crime plans. They can make grand announcements. They can explain away the statistics of murder, categorize it into different buckets. They can do all of that. But in the end, they can never tell you the truth about the crime problem, and therefore they can never truly address the crime problem. Because if they were to do that, they would implicate themselves. Now, do you want the UIC to be in that position? We cannot go on record by supporting Norman Washington Manley as a national hero. We cannot. Because when you check the facts about Norman Manley, not the fiction, not the nice glossy story of what you just saw from the Jamaica Information Service, which has done Jamaica a disservice. You know what a great country is? A great country who tells you is one that tells you the truth about their leaders. Even in America, they tell you the truth about George Washington. They tell you his dirty side and his clean side, his noble side. In the old America, the America before now, the students in their classroom used to discuss their leaders fully, their infidelity, their addiction to gambling, their drug addiction, their multiple wives and mistresses, their slave ownerships, their family squabbles, their abuse of power. So in a country like that, when you hear the details that you need to contextualize your history, you have created a more powerful people. If you tell your people a Nancy story, you create scammers. You create people who are ignorant of their past, so they don't know how to move forward. And that's what we have done in Jamaica. We have lied to ourselves about our leaders. We have downplayed Nanny, misrepresented Nanny, and we have overplayed Norman and misrepresented in a positive light Norman and Buster. We have sold our people a bag of goods about this wonderful thing called independence, this wonderful thing called emancipation. Lies. This wonderful thing about universal adult suffrage. Fake democracy. And if our people don't understand that, they will never understand where they need to be led. And so they will default. Many people, after the pandemic, defaulted back to their roots. Many have defaulted back to the orange and back to the green, totally forgetting when their backs were against the wall and the UIC was the only fledgling political movement that says, no, we're going to stand with you and for you. They have gone back like a dog to its vomit. I wonder if you understand what I'm talking about here. They have gone back, like the Bible says, a dog returns to its vomit. And now they have taken off their blue shirts and are waving their orange or their green. Mr. Neil, you realize what we're talking about here?
Yes. But the thing is now, what we are saying, Sir Madison, is not a berating, or disparaging, It is just telling what the truth is. So, as I did say, that Norman Manley would have been a hero in his own right in what he accomplished. What he accomplished and what he has done is more than what a normal man would do in terms of being a Rhodes Scholar, an athlete, a soldier, statesman, all of that. Good. But and nobody's totally bad or totally good. What we are saying is the system that he initiated was to our detriment, and that is the fact. And when we recognize that what he initiated, what Buster initiated, was to our own detriment and prevents us from becoming the best that we can be, then we can do something about it. But unless we can see that this two-phase system, which is really one thing, one system, unless we see it for what it is, then we will not be able to counteract with the solution. And that is simply what we're doing. Now, in light of the fact that the system that was organized by Mr. Manley worked toward making the Jamaican people, instead of better, less off, then he should not be a national hero. And that is the argument. So there's no malice here, and there's no berating of the person, but the truth is the truth. And as soon as we become comfortable with the truth, then we realize that changing our shirt for orange or green and for the orange or green party work against us. It doesn't benefit us. What is the sense of us? Somebody has cancer and you've gone more around the radioactive stuff because it feels good. You're going to get worse. It's going to get, it feel good, it look good, but you're going to get worse. So instead of taking more of the poisonous stuff, we start eating a healthy diet. We start looking at natural ways of getting ourselves better to get rid of the cancer cells. No, that is a cure. The cure is not nice because now we have to eat food that don't taste so good because we're not used to it. It's not pleasant, but do we want better for ourselves or not? And it all starts with facing the truth. And that's simply what it is.
And let's bear in mind, life is a trade-off. In life, it's always about trade-off. So I fully understand what Mr. Madison is saying, and I fully appreciate it. And there's a place and time for what he's saying. You have to be careful, your language, choice of word, diction, and so on. But it's a choice I am making. With realizing all that you're saying, Mr. Madison, I'm making a choice. And the choice I've made is that I'm going to speak about these matters with the level of clarity that I have been. And I will encourage the UIC to do so, because it's like shock therapy in some cases. There are some people it will take a lot for them to tear themselves away from these two colonial parties. And that number is dwindling, by the way. We're now somewhere around 30% of the population. 70% have given up for the most part, while still having, in some cases, some emotional attachment to one or the other. There are people who have given up who still have a particular soft spot for Siaga, for example, and some who have given up but still have a soft spot for Manley, for example. So you're right about the challenge that is presented, and I fully appreciate it. So thank you for sharing that with us. I will consider it going forward how best to do that, but my general position will not change. And Mr. Madison says you're opting for political suicide. Not necessarily. I mean, go back in history. You will see leaders like myself who have done the opposite of what you're proposing, and they have come out successfully. And then you'll have leaders who have done what you're proposing, and they have also come out successfully. So there's no, fully it's absolutely, one way or the other. All right. But thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Let's read some points here before we move on. It looks like we have a new argument here developing on the chat session. What Mr. Rockwell says, Miss Barrett, Jensek Barrett says, truth is truth. On the ground says we should call a spade a spade. Hypothetical way to gain a few likes. Rockwell said, then what would it's not fully written out here, but what would have been achieved? What is the ultimate goal? One of the problems we have with politics in Jamaica, and the ultimate goal is winning. It's winning. And I remember when I just started this UIC movement, one of the persons who were around at the time, who is now quite an adversary, he said to me, Joseph, you need to tell the people what they want to hear, and then when you win, you can now change the thing. I said to him, he's now with one of the alliance group, he's a leader in the group. But I said to him, if you are, what's the word I used? If you are deceptive to win, when you win, you're going to be even more of a deceiver. So I tell him, if I have to deceive the people to win, then I'm not going to win. I'm going to be clear and honest, which makes it harder because, in the politics that we have been trained and taught, we have been trained to be deceptive, to lie to people, to trick them to win. But what are you becoming? You see, in life, it's not just the achievement. It is how did you achieve it? For example, suppose you become the president of a country by stealing, by prostituting yourself, by misrepresenting yourself. What kind of president will you become? Who are you becoming as you achieve your objective? Do you realize that many of Jamaica's political leaders, by the time they become prime minister, they are so drained of morality because of what they had to do to get there? It's not an easy thing for you to join any of these two gangs, and work yourself up. Why do you think Bruce Golden selected Andrew Holness after he disgracefully resigned? What do you think was his reason? What would make him single out one of the members of the party and say he's the man that should become the leader after me? I am disgraced. Truths have come to the fore now about my connection to the underworld in my constituency. Disgraced, I'm resigning and I'm picking this person. Go back and look at the history of the PNP, for example. How did PJ Patterson become the president? How did Portia become the president? Go look at the journey that they took. Do you remember how much more than 100% vote Miss Simpson Miller got in her constituency? Almost every election, more than 100% of the votes in her constituency. How much Badman and Gun did move and stuff. Seriously, people, think about how people get to where they are. The goal cannot simply be to win. If the goal becomes simply to win, you lose. Because to win, there are many things you can do to win. You can do horrible things to win. You can cause more than 800 people to be murdered in the 1980s election to win. You can sell your soul to the devil to win. You can bankrupt your country to win. So we can never become winning at all costs. Yes, we want to win, but the way you win is more important than just winning. Your thoughts on that before we move on, Mr. Neil?
Integrity. and that is it. We must preserve our integrity if we want to build a nation that is founded on integrity. Integrity means no force, no fraud. If that is what we stand for, we stand for it totally.
Yes, absolutely. Peter White says we have to remember, Uniters, that it was Buster who had Rastafarians literally massacred and ordered them in dead or alive. He should have been prosecuted and behind bars for crimes against humanity. I don't believe in the death penalty, but that deserved it. That's treason. There. And let's look at Bustamante now, and we'll come back to this conversation because the two are so intertwined. So let's take a look at Bustamante, and then we're going to come back to this conversation and include him with Norman Manley and talk about the two together going forward here. So let's take a look quickly.
Sir Alexander Bustamante, the undisputed champion of the working class. As a trade unionist, he earned the title when he tackled unemployment and the terrible pay and working conditions facing working class Jamaicans. Sir Alexander spoke fearlessly against the English colonial rulers, writing several letters to the Gleaner and occasionally to British newspapers.
Widespread discontent led to social unrest in 1937 and 1938, and all the time, Bustamante continued to champion the cause of the people. On September 8, 1940, he was detained for an alleged violation of the Defense of the Realm Act. He was locked up for a year and 5 months. Sir Alexander later founded the Jamaica Labour Party in 1943 and won the first general election under universal adult suffrage in 1944. He also became the first Prime Minister of an independent Jamaica in 1962. Sir Alexander died in 1977.
All right, let's talk about the goodly gentleman, Mr. Bustamante and Norman Manley. Now, you have just seen a nice sanitized version of Bustamante. I want to remind you all of what Bustamante said to Norman Manley in the presence of people like Percival James Patterson and Edward Seaga, David Core, and other esteemed members of the political class back then. On the eve of Jamaica becoming so-called independent and adopting the Westminster system and the constitution approved by their colonial masters, prior to the document being fully sanctioned and approved, Bustamante said to Norman Manley, who was given the responsibility to lead the process of crafting the Jamaican Constitution to satisfy the demands of their colonial masters, he said to Norman Manley, "I am of the Queen and for the Queen." According to P.J. Patterson, what he meant by that is, let's not mistake the fact that Jamaica not leaving the monarchy. We want a Jamaica that remains firmly under the monarchy, because I'm on Bustamante, a death of my heart there. Me no want a Jamaica that is free. Now, this is the man who would have just told us spend 1 year and 5 months in prison. That must be a wonderful jail cell. If he went to the jail cell that I went to on September 22nd, 2021, the jail cell that I went into after leading that march, if that's the kind of jail cell he spent 1 year and 5 months in and come out and say he is of the Queen and for the Queen, something seriously wrong with his head. So I can assure you that Bustamante did not spend time in a real jail cell. I can assure you that Bustamante did not have to sleep on a concrete floor without linen, concrete bed, with roach and rat and feces and urine and dirty cloth all over the place, and other inmates that are threatening. If that's what him faced because he stood up for the people and come out and say, I am of the Queen and for the Queen, and therefore the Constitution of Jamaica must enshrine that Queen and the monarchy and their heirs in our governance, then that the jail cell there must have looked like the Pegasus Hotel. So we continue. Your thoughts on these two gentlemen, Mr. Neil?
All right. I think we need to bear in mind that the two parties that we have forming government are controlled oppositions, and they're part of a system that tells them what to do. So it could very well be that, and I think it's very plausible to think that if it is that the plantocracy wants us to behave a certain way, then they could have created that whole scenario so that the seed would have been sown for the establishment of the JLP. So now JLP fighting for the rights of the common man. So now that we have a full control opposition, JLP, as opposed to the PNP, which was more for the middle and upper class, according to some outlets at the time. So, but what Jamaicans would not have realized is whether they had voted for Bustamante's JLP or Manley's PNP, they were still voting for the plantocracy that kept their ancestors under chattel slavery and then under the semblance of fake emancipation. So we have to bear that in mind. And all the achievements of these parties over the years, it's like professional wrestling. Anybody here know professional wrestling? Some people believe it's
Very
real.
good
On the
point.
stage, the outcome is planned. So for all the things that these parties achieve for us, really, the people behind the scenes telling them what to do to keep us within reign. So
It's
I
pure
see,
theater.
yeah, I see some comments in the chat. We are not against the JLP nor the PNP. UIC is not against Jamaicans. We are not against the parties themselves. We are against the system. The parties are a tool of the system and a symptom of the system. What
Absolutely.
we are aiming for is to dismantle that system that controls and manifests itself to the two parties that are keeping that is keeping Jamaica subjugated. I have nothing against Andrew Holness, nor Mark Golding, nor against the party they represent, nor the MPs within the parties, nor for people who choose to follow them. What I say is open your eyes when private sector master talk. Look at the two leaders were throwing barbs at each other some time ago when it as it relates to citizenship, Golding citizenship. And I don't know if anybody noticed that the private sector came out and talk about oh they need to be more dignified, and the man them stop talk bram. And I said, wait, Jamaica, no see that. Do they realize what just happened? The private sector talk and the prime minister leader of opposition stop talk. There was a proposal rather, for the merging of Emancipation Day and Independence Day. To date, no MP from either side has come out and spoken on the issue. Is that not something that we should have paid attention to? We have a retired statesman, PJ Patterson, who's no longer beholden to them for votes. He spoke, but no current MP spoke against it. In fact, we are told in the Jamaica Observer that Babsy Grange had started to consider the proposal, the Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, after the private sector said what they said. What does that say to you? Our parties and those who are in them are controlled. That is what I have an issue with. And to be fair, we don't have something against the private sector either.
No,
because the private sector is necessary.
And let's be clear, the private sector in reality is all of us. There are only two sectors in Jamaica, the public sector and the private sector. The public sector are those who work on behalf of us through the government, and the private sector are the rest of us. But what we have is a special interest group called the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, which is a subset of the private sector. That group, like the plantocracy before it, has tremendous power, monetary power. They fund these two colonial parties. In this coming elections, they will give them over $500 million to buy your votes. We in the UIC, the first political movement in Jamaica, registered party in Jamaica, to ever bring this to the fore and explain to the Jamaican people how the current political system works. And if we understand how it works, then we will look at the two colonial parties in a different light. And we will look at the PSOJ oligarchs in a different light. And we will now start to understand what we have to do to fix the problem. Now, Norman Washington Manley and Sir Alexander Bustamante are two of our listed national heroes who, in my opinion, are there under false pretense. We have been defrauded and led to believe that these men actually worked on our behalf when what they did was to carry out the work of agents. You ever look at agents in a spy movie? What does the agent does? What does he do? The agent has to ensure that he blends in with the environment. He has to pretend as though he cares for the objective that the group cares about. And he has to do things to make the group believe that he's working for the group. When Bustamante went down to the Frome riot and bare his chest and say, shoot me and leave the people, he knew that he was not going to be shot. But the people don't know that. The people see, and remember the kind of people we were. We were the black masses who were being underpaid and overworked in poor working conditions. And we were taught from Sunday school and otherwise to revere the white-looking man. And here is a white man coming to our defense, to stand in front of us and say, shoot me and leave the people. My gosh, with Dash Marcus Garvey. And so our Jesus had come, our Lord had come, our Savior has come, to the point where we sang the song, we will follow Bustamante till we die. And Bustamante, who they're following till they die, said, I am of the Queen and I am for the Queen. And Bustamante said, of we, the Africans who happen to wear dreadlocks and have our own indigenous culture, said, bring them in, dead or alive. They wrote our textbooks. They commissioned what we learn in school. You think it's accident why we are the way we are today? You think we're just inherently bad? We're just inherently bad mind? We're just inherently unproductive? We're just inherently violent? We're just inherently antisocial? No. We have been socially engineered to be what you see today. So if you don't like what you see today, what you see is the product of those two parties and those who fund them to do to us what they have done. They teach us what education is. They taught our teachers and send them to teach us in the school. They taught the graduates of the teachers' colleges. They set the curriculum, the foundation, and what they should think and what they should pass on. And they have now programmed our DNA, our intellectual DNA, to be the way we think today. That's why today, some of us, a number of us, too many of us, relish being fully dunce. It's not by chance. It's not an accident. It has always been the intention of the colonizers to keep us fully dunce. That's why when they enslaved our people, they insisted you must learn to read and you must learn to write. And if you try, that was punishable by death. We'll dismember you, cut off a hand, cut off a finger, cut off a toe, and maybe cut off a neck. I shouldn't say that on here because they will flag these things. But here's my point, my people. It's time for us to wake up. Some people would say, wake the up, fill in the blank. It's time for us to wake up, my people. It's time for us to sever the umbilical cord from your favorite colonial party. It's time for you to see what has been done to your grandmother and your grandfather. What has been done to your mother and your father. What has been done to you and your spouse, if you have one. And what has been done and is being done to your children and your children right now. Norman Manley and Bustamante were lies. The history that they're teaching you about these two men are lies, deception. They were agents of the crown, and they did a masterful job of deceiving our people. That's why you still have a constitution that puts your enslaver as the head of your state. That's why you have a constitution that still supports a police force that disrespects the people and protects those who are enemies of the people. That's why you have an army that will never come to our defense and will always work for others. That's why they're in Haiti right now, killing our African brothers or helping to do so. These two colonial parties represents everything that is wrong with Jamaica. Everything. From our school system failing, to our healthcare system failing, to our economy being a master slave economy, to this day. We are still in a master slave economy. What is that? An economy where a few controls it and extract the wealth of the many, leaving them to live on the margin. On the margin. While some live sumptuously on the hillside with the road nicely paved to their gates with high walls, lights on the gate, security at the entrance, big dogs, beautifully arranged gardens, lovely homes, beautiful chandeliers, sipping wine and eating caviar and laughing after the fools who are shouting shower and power. Sorry, I don't mean to call you fools, but it's quite foolish to do that when you know what I know. My friends, we have been deceived. We have been robbed. We have been kept in slavery from 1834 until now. We're still in a slavery. It has just been changed, adjusted to make you a little bit more comfortable in being enslaved. And the UIC saying the time has come. The time has come to tell them time up. All right. Let's get some pointers now from the chat group and then we can close off. Where were we? Clifton Lawrence, Mr. Patterson, a true leader. What a true leader for me is one who speak like you. Mr. Rockwell, can you say categorically that Norman Manley or even Bustamante were under duress? Under duress or not, I would rather they take the position of Sam Sharp. Yeah, if you want to be heroes, take the position of Nani, Sam Sharp, Paul Bogle, William Gordon. Yeah. Mr. White says, remember, Uniters, that it was Buster who had Rastafarians literally massacred and ordered them dead or alive. He should have been prosecuted and behind bars for crimes against humanity, not death. Well, you know, the UIC don't subscribe to the death penalty because, you know, there's no infallible judge and justice system. But I strongly believe that given what we're talking about here, if anybody needed to be punishable by death, that would be one, when you understand the truth. Mr. Rockwell, so focus on the system and the mechanism that buttresses or subtend the system and not on past personalities. Sorry, my buddy, we have to focus on the past personalities. Otherwise, what we're sharing becomes merely theoretical. This is not a theory. This is a practical class. And so we have to teach the practical of what's going on. Mr. Madison, why are you afraid of the truth? Ask on the ground. I don't think he's afraid of the truth. He's just trying to find a way that is more strategic for us to win. And I understand that. But as I explained before, we're not going to win it. At least I am not. The movement can vote to go that way, but I am not going that way. I think some people who talk certain kind of way, they do not live here. Clifton Lawrence, very interesting comment. And Peter says, those two heroes were probably put in place as a last-ditch effort to solidify the Queen's hold on the remainder of the colonial British power. Well said. Education, I never know. I will hear my thoughts been spoken out loud, I guess, on a platform. All right, that's Mr. Underground. Political strategic error. All right, Mr. Rockwell, you're still hooked on that one. Understood. Controlled opposition. Keep using that. Describe the two colonial parties. That would be more relatable in some instances than colonial parties. But we use them both, Mr. Jamflix. I don't know why some people are so worried about us calling them colonial parties. That's what they are. Mr. Neil, are they not colonial parties?
That is the truth, sir.
Yeah. We're talking about
and the control opposition too.
And they are controlled oppositions, and the two go hand in hand. Let's talk about both of them, because we have to label them properly. And then we have to say what the purpose of that is. So there are two colonial parties presented to us as controlled oppositions so that we can be fooled. Wonderful. I agree with you, Peter. We had too much black heroes. That's interesting. That's the previous point. This should have been your speech from Belmont Road, not St. Elizabeth. Help me on that one, Mr. Madison. What are you talking about? This should be your speech from Belmont Road, not St. Elizabeth. Okay. Not sure I fully understand. Help me out. Too much of us was starting believe in ourselves. Okay, I got that, Clifton. All right. So here we are, my good friends. We have now come to the end of the heroes. But somebody said earlier on that there are many other heroes. There are, I think it was Misha that said, you know, those, okay, I follow you now, Mr. Madison. Those who voted for Mr. Neil, for example, who stepped out of their comfort zone, who stepped out of the tribal thinking and voted for Mr. Neil in Northeast and those 30 persons are really heroes, at least in our eyes. And those who voted for me in the last local government election in Braes River Division are heroes. And those who voted for Mr. Winston Wright in Bethel Town over there in Westmoreland are heroes. And those who voted for Sheldon McGann and also for Mr. Kenneth Harper were brave souls who stepped out and say, yeah. And so tonight, we're leading a massive protest. This protest is not going to be a protest where we walk down the road with placards, where we have police follow us around and hunt us down and pepper spray us and manhandle us and lock up some away. So I'm talking about the 500 heroes who walked with me from downtown Kingston Parade, and we tried to make our way to Gordon House against the entire battalion. They bring out all of the police against us because there weren't any real crimes being committed anywhere else. That was the best use of the nation's resources on September 22nd, 2021, to bring them out. Soldiers, police in jeeps and trucks. Them have truck ready to cart us in. And they were on horsebacks and bike. And they were buzzing around for some helpless people. No weapons, no nothing, just talking and walking. And they push us, grab us, hit us, pepper spray us, and drag us off to jail and treat us in some inhumane ways. That's what they're there for, eh? But you won't get to do that again, because we're going to lead the biggest protest Jamaica has ever seen. And I'm inviting all of you to join me in that protest. This protest is to make the UIC 500,000 members strong, 500,000 dues-paying members strong, 500,000 active members strong, who are committed to a new Jamaica where all of us can live, earn, and retire with dignity, with true liberty in our own country. That's what we're going to achieve. And so that is the mission right now. So tomorrow night, when we meet again, this time to have our regular Tuesday meetings, because we're not going to have regular Tuesday meetings. We're going to be talking about what we're doing and how we're doing it to ensure that we have the 500,000 members. So every Tuesday, 8:30 p.m., make sure you go to the website and subscribe. Go there and register now so that you will get your invitation by email with the link to come on. And we're going to build a solid coalition of Jamaicans across Jamaica and across the world to take back our country. Mr. Neil, you get the last word before we close out tonight.
All right, people, thank you for tuning in. You see where we have 5 national heroes who fought for us to be seen as dignified both by our own selves and by our governors. And then we have 2 so-called heroes who sought to undo that by being instruments of the colonizers. No, I am imploring you that you not allow them to colonize your mind and your choice any further. Let us stand on what the 5 original heroes fought for, paid with their lives for, so that we can continue the fight. No, we are proposing now that we continue the fight by having this people's movement become stronger, 500,000 strong. Help us to get that done, not because we are better than anybody, but because it is us who are doing it. So I'm making the appeal now, Mr. Patterson making the appeal now, but really this is an appeal for ourselves, for us as Jamaicans to realize what Nani, what Sam Sharp, what Marcus Garvey, George William Gordon, Paul Bogle realized for self-governance, for the dignity of the Jamaican. And then from there, we can have that butterfly, as you were, that ripple effect. Also called a butterfly effect to other countries where the African sees worth within himself and herself, instead of being tools for the colonial system that seeks to trick us and subjugate us. So guess what? Do the right thing. UICJamaica.com. Join up, sign up, subscribe, and let us take back Jamaica for ourselves, for our children, for our future. Let us use. So now it's the people against the system. Let us show that the people power is stronger than the system power, that the colonizers will not win. We will determine our own fate. We will elect our own people, fund our own people. We don't have to depend on their dirty money. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Mr. Neil. Good night to all of you, Juliet, Kirk, Peter, Clifton, Jamflix, Rockwell, all of you. Thank you all so very much for being on tonight. Really appreciate you. It's been 3 hours well spent. See you tomorrow at 8:30. All the best, and let's get the billboards going. Take care. One Jamaica, stronger together. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.